In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only the Stratosphere Lounge. Hi, everybody. Uh, it's your host, Bill Whittle, back again with another episode of the Stratosphere Lounge. We're moving around a little bit. You can see there's some mild tectonic action here in California tonight. It's not exactly earthquake quality, but things are shaking and rolling a little bit. I have something, hi, everybody. I have something a little different to lead with today. If you've had, yes, we're recording. We're recording. You know why we're recording? For those of you who watch this on YouTube, you're going to have to wait a week because we've been taken down from YouTube. But when you eventually get to watch this, I've recently decided I'll just start the stream and then I'll adjust the microphone and do all those other things. Then I'll start recording so it'll look like a flawless launch. This time, just as I was getting ready to go home before I come back at night for this, I thought, you know what? I've got the chip reader. Let me switch the microphone now. Ta-da! Anyway, as I said, something completely different. For those of you who are feeling a little grim, that's not something I do very often, but if you're having yourself kind of a rough day, I've got a little Christmas present for you. My wife is doing an awful lot of photography lately, and she's shooting a bunch of Christmas cards for people. And so, as usual, she's created this little corner of our house. Be a shock, really, to see how small it is, but when you know camera angles, boy, you can get away with murder. She creates this little corner of the house that she does her Christmas cards in, and they're all beautiful. But this is a family member of ours that I haven't shown you guys yet, but I don't know. I just think it's kind of fun. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Here we go. Ready? That is Katya. That's our little Persian. Can I play this again? Yeah, I'll do it one more time. Here we go. Yep, yep. There it is. She's she has Natasha has a lot of dresses and clothes and lace and things like that, props, mostly costume and stuff. And whenever she rolls the dresses out, little Katya will go right into the middle of like the nicest silk dress and just kind of bury underneath that, and then just poke her head out. So she's kind of dressed for the occasion. Mersh was asking about citizenship status. Her test is on the 29th. We had a run through with the immigration attorney. We're not expecting any problems. She really knows her stuff, but we will see. It'll be an interesting New Year. Gets her citizenship on the 29th. Our anniversary, 5-year anniversary, is on the 31st, so it would be something to celebrate. Spark points out our popularity skyrockets. I ought to do political commentary, but first, interspersed with cat videos instead of commercials. That's how I would do it. That's a fun little thought. Tiki Rocket says, I love how the cats attacking the bubbles think they're gazelles. That's exactly what there is. Now, this one, I didn't have time to transfer, and I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned and kind of ugly, nasty way. But I just saw this on Instagram, and the reason I want to share it is because this is why we're going to win the culture war. Again, this is me holding it up to the camera, okay? I didn't have the time or the inclination or even the knowledge on how to do this, but I don't know. I just find this exceedingly amusing and a little bit tragic. So if you want to know why we're going to win, I've been saying from the beginning, I'll just lean forward a little bit, that you can't beat the biology out of people no matter how hard you try to socialize somebody and no matter how much propaganda you pour into their head. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, you you can't reprogram, millions of years of evolution of biology. And to prove my point, I present with great amusement this, which is from the Chicks on the Right Instagram feed, and even though it's raw, you'll get the general idea. I think. Here we go. Ready? This is a case of virtue signaling gone horribly wrong. First of all, let me hit the little sound thing. Why am I not hearing the sound here? Sometimes I get annoyed.
Green salad.
Okay, there we go.
So I'm gonna bring her.
Here we go. Ready? Check it out.
So some of you just don't believe that my dog's a vegetarian, so I have this set up right now for you guys to see. We have this really gross, it's like a beef, like dog food, and then I have this delicious green salad. So I'm gonna bring her out and we're gonna see which one she likes. Also, my dog is very healthy. She loves greens. She loves her salad, and I don't force her to eat her salad. It's what she likes. Come here. Come here. Okay. Okay, so this is Bonnie. She is my little vegetarian. Okay? Now, no, don't eat that. No, eat that salad. Look, salad. You want to eat the salad? Here, pick one. No. No, Bonnie, no. No, Bonnie, no.
No, the salad. There's so much about this I love. First of all, when the dog comes into frame, you can see the dog's acting unruly. That's because the dog's about to get its first real meal since having the misfortune to fall in with this person. And to say that's actually more than I want to say. I don't want to say misfortune. It's obvious that she cares about the dog. She just is a little nutty. So I'm not. See how virtuous I am. I'm not only so virtuous that I'm a vegetarian, but even my pets are vegetarians. I have managed through my own ability to rise above my base instincts, not only to cure my own desire for animal flesh, but my pets too. And really, what she's saying here is that you can socialize anything. Dogs are natural carnivores, but she has a dog that's a vegetarian because she's a vegetarian, and therefore the dog's vegetarian, and the dog loves salads because the dog has only been gotten salad. That's all the dog's ever had to eat is a salad. And she is genuinely shocked to discover the dog prefers dog food. Now, I'm not trying to argue with Mr. Ripon Ellingsworth, who's got the greatest name on the internet. She says she forgot to tell the dog. Actually, I think the whole point of this, Mr. Ellingsworth, or Ripon, if I can call you that, is that she tells the dog on a daily basis, probably 17, 18 times a day. She tells the dog, good dog, for eating the salad, because that's all the dog gets to eat. But the thing that's interesting about that is she is utterly shocked. And not only shocked, but disturbed that her dog is doing something so vile as to eat meat. Political Animal says if she loved her dog, she would effing feed her dog. I thought so too. I said the misfortune to end with this person. It's obviously this person cares about this dog, and certainly living a vegetarian life with this woman is better than being out on the street, run over by cars and covered in mange and things. And obviously she loves the dog, and I don't mean to take any of that away, but nevertheless, there you go. And to me, when I saw this today, and a couple of people said it's old, I'm sure it is, but for me, it's the encapsulation of everything. It's all there. First, there's the virtue signaling. I'm going to show you that my dog is a vegetarian because I'm a vegetarian. That's how far up this family is. Then there's the shock and the embarrassment and the kind of almost the outrage that the dog is doing what dogs will do, despite all of the loving care and all of the endless affirmations. But also buried in there is the great contradiction. It's kind of the lie that you tell so that you can get away with doing things like forcing a dog to eat salad. Forcing a dog to eat salad is cruel. It's what dogs don't eat salad. It's cruel and it's bad for the dog. And if you only give a dog a salad, then the dog will eat the salad. But the part I find most fascinating about that video, and most fascinating really about the whole progressive movement, is that she says the dog actually prefers the salad. It's not like I forced the dog to eat the salad. It's that the dog prefers the salad. And she apparently believed that. I saw that. I just thought it was marvelous. Just thought it was marvelous. Yeah, Lady Hawk said my dad used to tell a story about a dog that didn't like collard greens. After a few days, he was hungry enough to eat the collard greens. That's true. It's always interesting how the influence your parents have on you, you know? I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with my dad. He was a busy guy. He had basically one job that was two shifts, you know, daytime manager, nighttime manager. But certain things he told me stayed with me. He told me, because he grew up in the Depression and was also spent some time in World War II, although at the very, very end of the war. And he said, if you get hungry enough, you'll eat shoe leather. I said, what? He said, you will. Said, you'll eat shoes? Yep. And I believed him, and I had no reason not to. He also told me something, and it's funny how little things stay in your head, because I was just thinking about this earlier today. Just a little thing. And I don't even know where it came from. I do remember he told me, because I grew up in Bermuda, when we finally went to Pennsylvania to visit the family once a year, the cousins and everything. He told me that if you ever get your hands cold, like frostbitten cold, so cold you can't feel them, don't put them in hot water, because you won't be able to feel how hot the water is and you'll burn your fingers on top of it. I thought, that's good advice. The other thing he told me, strangely enough, and I don't remember where this came from, but he said, if you have a man who's out asleep in the cold out in the snow and he's going to freeze to death, he said, as long as this guy's got his hand in hot water, he won't freeze to death no matter how cold it gets outside, because the hot water going through will warm his blood as it goes through his hand, and that warm blood will go through the rest of his body. And I thought, that's actually pretty cool. I suppose that's probably true, right? As long as you got a way to keep your blood heated, you know, that warm blood's going to go through. And I thought, I don't know if I'm ever going to have a situation where I find myself in freezing cold and I can only get my hand into warm or hot water, but nevertheless, I will take that advice if necessary. Hey, speaking of messing around with your blood, I have a true tale of adventure to tell. Bart's Treasure says it's not enough to maintain core temperature. Maybe. I don't know. This is an interesting theory. It's fun knowing little things, you know. I love trivia and certain kinds of trivia anyway. They were doing, they were testing thing. Now the Germans did this course on Jewish prisoners and other prisoners, but the Soviets were trying to figure out how to, what's the best way to warm up some of their soldiers or pilots or whatever who were suffering from extreme hypothermia. And they tried putting them in warm baths, moderately warm baths, hot, you know, gave them tons of blankets. And what they found was the best way to warm a person up was to put two big Russian peasant girls in the same bed and warm them up that way. Now, that may be biased in terms of the whichever one of these boxes these guys checked. Which one would you prefer if you find yourself freezing to death in Stalingrad? Would you prefer to be warmed by a series of blankets, a warm bath, mild electrical shock, a couple of gorgeous Russian peasant girls, by having hot irons applied to the soles of your feet? Probably you're going to check that one. But I can relate to that. I mean, I think that kind of makes sense. Anyway, back to the True Tales of Foolishness. So, let me just preface this by saying that this is no one's fault but my own, as usual. I managed to get myself into a bit of trouble medically, which I don't do very often, but I got into the trouble medically for the same way that I get into so much trouble, and that is I was left in a restroom unattended, and that's always a recipe for disaster for me. So I told you guys about 2 weeks ago, I went to this get this vitamin IV drip, and I felt great. I felt absolutely great. Aesop just chimed in to say I still have my lip mole. That's very gracious of you to notice. Thank you. I'm flattered. Yes, that's going on January 13th. That's when the meteor will strike. And we'll have a Name That Crater contest coming up. But yes, as Dave Big Booty points out, in my defense, I was left unsupervised. So I went and had this intravenous thing, and they oxygenated the blood, and they gave me all these vitamins and all this other stuff. And the last thing they did was they give you this magnesium, which is really warm, actually kind of burns a little bit where on the sites. So they put the magnesium thing in. Oh, my arm is so warm. I'm gonna rub it a little bit here, rub it here. I have to back up a little bit so I can demonstrate on the anatomically correct build all here. And I'm just rubbing here. Okay. Fantastic. I was very pleased with the results. And then a day or two afterwards, I find, this area here is still a little bit sore. Just a little bit sore. Just a tiny little patch here, probably from the magnesium somehow. Okay, no problem. Stayed like that for a week, and it wasn't getting better. And then, starting 3 or 4 days ago, it started to not hurt more, but it started to hurt over a wider area. And then yesterday, it was starting to hurt from like down just above my wrist all the way up to my shoulder. This whole sore on my biceps, feel little bumps in here now. This was yesterday. So, Fiery Waco says I had Mohs surgery. It looked like they took a melon baller to my head. Thank you. I'm having Mohs surgery. Where is it? Here. And that's exactly what it looks like. The little crater. That's why we're going to have the impact crater contest. So anyway, yesterday I thought, you know what? This isn't good. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. And this soreness, and especially these little lumps here and stuff, not so good. So I immediately went down to our doctor. Now we have a Russian doctor who's been living in America for 15, 20 years. Best possible combination. I don't know why, but I don't know. It may have something. I don't know what the difference is, but it's got something to do with. Let me just phrase it this way. My experience just in Los Angeles, is that Russians in Los Angeles are a lot more like small-town Americans than Americans in Los Angeles. And this was the first doctor I've had as an adult that struck me as one of those, real doctors who, instead of saying, you've got 3.5 minutes, tell me what's wrong so I can order up some blood tests, this guy just sat down. First time I was in there, talked to me for 45 minutes, asked me about everything, He's a really good doctor. So I went down there and I told him that I thought, based on my internet research, that I had superficial thrombophlebitis. Just being able to pronounce that gave me an enormous feeling of satisfaction. Superficial thrombophlebitis. Because I had thought for the week or 8 days, 9 days, when it was mostly just holding firm, that I just somehow, the magnesium had burned myself. And that's the problem with coming to a conclusion. When you come to a conclusion on something that you don't know anything about, you lock out all the other possibilities. So when it started to get hurt a little worse and it started to spread, I'm doing all this, I'm looking, research, magnesium injection, magnesium IV, magnesium muscle soreness. Turned out magnesium is actually good for cramped muscles. Couldn't find anything on it. And then I found out, like IV arm soreness and stuff. So now we get to the part where I was left unsupervised and responsible for this whole thing. So we did watch out for Armenian doctors in LA. They look and talk a lot like Russian, but it's a whole nother critter. Says action. Comtexis. Yes, my wife's made me aware of that, actually. So what happened is, I'll get back to what happened yesterday. What happened is I'm sitting there for 2 hours having a great time. The guys at this place were great. I'm feeling great. And just about 15, 20 minutes before we're done, I was there for almost 2 hours, so was Natasha, sitting right across from me. I decide, okay, I've had enough fluids pumped into me, now I have to just get up. Can I go to the bathroom? Yes. So the guy puts my little IV bag on one of those little chrome IV stands with little wheels on it, and I get up and I start pushing this IV thing into the bathroom, and then I get in the bathroom and close the door, and now I have to kind of arrange things, move things around so I get everything in the right position here. And while I'm doing that, I'm just cranking my arm back and forth like this, and I feel like that needle's, it's not even a needle, it's a little plastic thing, right? It's flexible, and it's all moving around in here, and I finally going about my business, and I look and I can see that blood is flowing back. It's normally fluid going in. I see a little bit of black blood flowing down because it was, a little like a little U joint on a toilet. And I thought, oh, God, I'm in there 5 minutes. Get back out, sit back down. Happy days. Well, turned out that while I was in there moving all this stuff around, I think what happened was that little IV thing was poking a bunch of little holes in my vein. And it was trying to tell me something for a week. And I just thought, no, it's magnesium. No. So I go in, I talk to the doctor. He says, I don't think it's serious. It might just be a reaction to high vitamin concentration. Don't know if this is a good idea. He may be right. But in any event, he said, let's just get an ultrasound to be sure. And I said, okay. And now for one of the very few times in my life where I realize, I'm paying a fortune for health insurance in California. It's crazy. It's unbelievable how much it costs. And I pay it every month. So I'm not getting any free health care. No one else is either. You get prepaid health care. But having said that, spending month after paying these huge health insurance bills and not needing any health insurance, comes a point when you start wishing you maybe just get hit by a bus or, get something serious but not life-threatening, something, I don't know, appendicitis maybe, something, so you get your money's worth. So I just march over to first I go get a hot dog down to Johnny's Pastrami, and then I come back, hot dog and a root beer float. I come back and I go in for the ultrasound. Now, I'm one of those people that's curious about just about everything, and I have not had an exception to this until yesterday. Whenever I go to any kind of procedure, any kind of doctor, I just say, I'm just one of those curious guys. Can you, would it be possible for just, I don't want to interrupt what you're doing, but if you could just tell me what you're doing, I'm always interested in it. And they usually, yeah, okay, well, this is the MRI and this is this. And this woman said, no, that's not going to happen. Okay, sure, okay. So I'm lying on this thing, and I've got my gown on because I have to pull the gown off my shoulders because God knows you can't be in there without a shirt. I didn't want to. Anyway, so they put me into a gown so that they can examine my upper arm, and she lubes this thing up and starts doing this ultrasound. Now, she's not telling me anything, but I can see the ultrasound monitor, and I'll tell you what, this lady really was terrific. She really knew what she was doing. I have, I'm just interested in these things. So sometimes I'll see an x-ray, like a dental x-ray or something, and I'll say, is that the big white little thing? Is that the post that the previous dentist put in there on that bridge? Yep. But they can see things like, see this little line here, this little tiny little abscess here, there's a little bit of infection here. What? So reading x-rays is hard if you don't know what you're doing, but ultrasound is it's like Chinese calculus. You're just these squiggles, just moving all the time. But as I'm watching, thank you, broke college student. As I'm watching, I'm beginning to sense a pattern, and that is you see all this kind of spongy, mushy stuff, which was, what's left of my once magnificent muscular system. And there's like this black hole. And she'd start pressing at various places on my arm, upstream of where the ultrasound was. And when she'd press, you could see this black hole just go bloop, 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 like that. Wasn't making those noises, I'm just adding those for effect. So I can see that this black area is a void, which is the inside of the vein, and I'm watching her put pressure on the vein and just close up the vein, open, close, open. Great. So we're moving down the arm now. Bloop, 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 bloop. Hooray. We get to somewhere around here-ish, and she presses down on the arm, and the thing goes, oink. You would normally just go, bloop, but this one just goes, oink, oink, oink. And I thought, oh, this is not good. Everything else went bloop. This one only went oink. And that's telling me something. So next thing you know, now we're getting side views, and we're this, you're snapping all these pictures, and now we're we're using the little digital thing. I put a little dot here, and we'll mark it here, and this is so many microns or centimeters or millimeters or whatever the case may be. And okay, all right. So she keeps blooping up and down the arm and doing all this other stuff. There comes a point where she's looking at this and she turns on something, and all of a sudden, in all of these voids, I can see it. The ultrasound is showing like bright red and bright blue. It's just overlaid. Like it's not graded. It's just this is really really red and this is really really blue. And she finally finishes, and she says, "Okay, well we've done the test. I'll just go talk to the doctor for a few minutes, and then he can call you with the results." Okay. Can I ask you one question before you go? Yes. That red and blue that I saw in the ultrasound, is that Doppler? She goes, yes, it's Doppler. The red is your arteries and your blue is your veins. I said to myself, I knew it. And while she was gone to talk to the doctor, I thought about this, and I thought, not only do we have a technology that can see inside your body with sound waves, but it is so sophisticated that it can determine which is arterial blood flow, which is venal blood flow, based on the velocity of the blood. Because arterial blood, I imagine, moves faster than venal blood does. I was just really impressed by that. Anyway, make a long story short, a long story shorter, I finally get in the car and I'm driving home. It's an hour and a half drive back because I'm in Santa Monica, and I get out of there at 5:04 p.m. And finally, the doctor calls and says, "Well, turns out you do have a clot in your arm, but it's a superficial clot. It's not a deep vein clot, so it's nothing to worry about." And I thought, okay. My dad, he said, he did some blood tests. Everybody wants my blood. Everybody's just taking my blood like it's just, like it's, it's like those mints at restaurants. Just take a handful of bills of blood on the way out to the car. But the doctor, being a good doctor, said, so we took the blood, we're gonna check a bunch of things, but it's unusual that you should be developing clots like this. I said, well, doctor, to be honest with you, while I was left unsupervised in the bathroom, I managed to move that IV insert around a lot. I mean, a lot. I think I just poked a bunch of holes in myself. Yeah, okay. Anyway, we'll check. Now, my dad was on blood thinners for the second half of his life. My dad was an interesting guy. I don't think I ever saw my dad sick, ever. But he was injured more than any human being I've ever seen. He was perpetually injured. It's either having these surgeries that were like the size of, incisions this long and that wide for kidney stones, or this or that. And he had a triple heart bypass that got him another 12 years of really good good life. And he's just covered with scars. He's like an old lion, my dad, just like one of those old lions. He's like missing half a tooth on one side and all these scars and all this, just bare patches where some other hyena bit him, and like I said, had half a tooth knocked out where he got kicked in the face by a gazelle, that kind of thing. It's one of those old carcasses. Which I find to be admirable. And he was on blood thinners quite a lot. My brother also, my younger brother, had a deep vein thrombosis issue on an airline flight, and that nearly got serious. So anyway, my arm hurts, and it's my own fault. As I was thinking about this on the drive home, I realized, I suppose there are people out there who would look at this and say, I've got a lawsuit here. Some kind of a lawsuit. And I thought, that's got to be a bad way to live, That's got to be kind of a nasty way to live. The reason my arm hurts, and the reason I got a blood clot in my arm, is because I went to the bathroom and I went in there and poked holes in myself. And that's my fault. The guy didn't make 19 attempts to put the thing into my arm. That was me. That was me being my own dumb self. Let me just adjust the headroom, because we believe in the rule of thirds here in the Stratosphere Ranch. But I'm sure there are people who would say, and the thing and the thing of it is, Helios says usually malpractice lawsuits need to have some really nasty consequences to be successful. Well, how about this, Helios? My arm hurts so bad I can barely move it. I mean, I'm in such an incredible pain, and I can't even edit because I mean, it's not that I do heavy lifting and stuff, but if I can't, if I can't even, get my arm this high, Your Honor, it's just very difficult for me to work these keys that, oh, sorry, it's okay. See how easy it is? And, and given the nature of our society today, all I really would have to do is say something like, hey, I've got, a blood clot in my arm because of what happened. And probably they'd make a settlement. Make a quick way to pick up 10 grand, maybe, something reasonable. I remember thinking, that's just not going to happen. Helios said they bring in experts to refute the claim, and then a jury decides. If we took all of these things to juries, we wouldn't have this problem. The problem is that it would never get to a jury. The problem is that enough people have done this for so long that they get the same advice that I've heard businessmen get all the time. It's the same thing with sexual harassment cases. Guy who was my foster father, who I just loved, man, who was just absolutely adored. He was my mentor and took care of me for the entire final 3/4 of my life. And he ran a geochronology business. His name was Dr. Stipp. He was my best friend's dad. And somebody came in and accused him and his company of that, and he didn't do it. And I know he didn't do it, and nobody in the company did. It was a small company. And his attorney said, well, Jerry, here's what you can do. You can go to court on this, and it can take 2 years. You'd be paying me for 2 years. And if you lose, this person might get a jury decision of a couple $1 million. This would be in the early 90s, I think it was. It's all going to depend on the people they select on the jury and whether they like you or not. But she seems like the kind of person who could put on a good show, so you've got a chance of winning that, you got a chance of not. Or you can just pay her the 25 grand and be done with it. And he fought that for a long time because, like me, he just said, this is wrong and I'm not going to pay it. And finally, he just agreed. And it's virtually impossible to not agree these days. And so now we have this giant extortion racket going on. And that racket is, I pray for small injuries from other people so that I can sue them, and I don't have to prove it in court. I can just, I just make the threat, and then I get my check. Why is my shirt so crooked? Probably because of my, because of the arm. It was so brutally injured by the negligence of these heartless people who couldn't even take a few moments to help me. Yeah. So that's how we get into trouble. I saw a little clip on Instagram. It was Joe Rogan asking Jordan Peterson, how do we get into this mess? And Jordan Peterson said, very slowly, he said, I encroach on you. I'm not going to just whack you in the face. I'm not going to walk up to you and punch you. I'm just going to get closer to you than you like. Maybe this is Jordan Peterson, maybe 3 millimeters closer to you than you like. And then you'll start to protest. The second you start to protest, I'll stop. And then I'll wait. And then I'll encroach another 3 millimeters. And I'll wait until you protest again, and then I'll stop, and then I'll wait. And the next thing you know, you find you're 3 miles back from where you started from, wondering how you got there. And it's like, you allowed me to do this. You just allowed me to do it in increments. That's really true. And driving to work, thinking about that, I thought, that's, it's a ratchet. That's how it works. Most people think that a boa constrictor crushes its prey. It doesn't do that. I don't think it's got the strength to do that. Boa constrictors don't crush their prey. They don't just, no. They wrap around the prey, and they wait for the prey to breathe, because breathing is something that animals have to do. And when the prey exhales and gets a little smaller, it tightens up. And then it won't release. And every breath that this thing takes it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, but it never just squeezes it. It just allows you tighten, tighten again, and that's how it works. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. But we're going to beat these people because dogs aren't vegetarians. And that's the answer to that. Let's see, do I have any other true tales of adventure to share today? I don't think so. There was some other little thing that just flew over. It'll probably come to me on the drive home. So tonight we're going to do Facebook questions. And we'll see. Marisha asked, what do I want for Christmas? I want a Jetson. Yeah, that's it. Action Com Texas says, yes, that's the way you cinch up a saddle on a horse. You wait till he exhales and tighten up, repeat until it's good and tight. See, I like that kind of knowledge. I like the fact that there are people who watch a show who know how to cinch up a saddle on a horse. So anyway, yeah, that's my week. Yeah, and Ditto Third says California regulate that Jetson too much. Exactly. I mentioned this in one of the shows I did recently. The unnamed person was Dick Rutan, one of America's Forgotten Heroes, fighter pilot, first man to fly around the world unrefueled, the living definition of a steely-eyed missile man. He had a nice off-road vehicle, and he had to put it on a trailer when he lived in Mojave up in California. Had to put it on a trailer and drive for 2 or 3 hours so he could go to a state-sanctioned off-road area. And then he had to put it back on a trailer and drive it back. Then he moved to an undisclosed location in the United States of America. Left California, went back to the States to live, and now it's street legal. He just gets in it and drives it around. Has fun up in the hills. I had fun up in the hills too, driving that vehicle. It's great. Yeah, that's how it works. It's that incrementalism, that just squeeze, breathe, squeeze, breathe, squeeze. Am I going to leave like Dave Rubin? I don't know. Dave's gone. I'm going to be pretty much the last man standing here, I think. I sure do like this office. I like my house. I like the fact that it's air conditioned outside. I think you're is it inversely proportional? Think about this. I think your likelihood of leaving California is inversely proportional to the amount of time you spent living in Florida. Yeah, but I was in Texas on Friday and Saturday, just walking around, and I realized not only is this a free place, but people are aggressively nice there, and people in America are shockingly nice compared to virtually everyone else in the world, possible exception of Canada, which is just America's, hat. So, it takes a lot to drive you away from this place. It's not just the fact that it's air conditioned outdoors, and even in the summertime when it's, it'll be 110 degrees here sometimes in summer, but at night it'll get down to the low 70s. And for a guy who grew up where it's 98 degrees in the daytime and 97 degrees at nighttime, that's nice. That's really nice. Yeah, but they're doing their best, They're really doing their best. Once again, we got a new rising star in the comment section. Mr. or Ms. Action Com Texas says, I lived in California for 15 years, San Pedro on the LA Harbor Strip. I know San Pedro well. I can't tell you how glad I am to be out of that horrible place. The reason that I'm so reluctant to go is because growing up in Florida, it's not just hot and humid, it's flat as a board. I think the highest point in South Florida is 6 or 7 feet above sea level. I think that's it. My friend Phil, who you remember from several episodes ago, who got me through some tough years when we were all working at the Miami Planetarium, Phil got himself a new, I think it was the Millennium Falcon, wasn't it, Phil? Got himself a new Mazda sedan with a rotary engine. I think it was that car. It might have been a subsequent car. And this thing had a really groovy feature where it's a stick shift. And this thing had a feature where if you go up on an incline, you take your foot off the brake, and the car will basically lock the parking brake, so that when you shift gears, if you've ever done a stick on a hill, you know that in order to do this effectively, you need 3 feet. You got 1 foot on the brake, you got to have 1 foot on the clutch, and then 1 foot on the accelerator. And since you don't have 3 feet, if you're on a hill in a stick, you generally just have to take 1 foot off the brake, pop it on the clutch, get it into gear, and do it. So anyway, this car was a stick car, and it had this feature, and we wanted to test the feature out. But there are no hills in Florida. And I mean there are no hills in Florida. So we had to drive 35 minutes to Dadeland Mall because we knew there was a 2 or 3 story parking structure in Dadeland. There were no other, there was just nothing else there. We drove 35, 40 minutes. Remember that, Phil? I remember that. Just so we could get on a ramp so we could test this theory out. We needed what? 7 vertical feet on a 6-degree angle, something like that? Nope. Yeah. Ghost says, Bill, maybe you don't need to leave California, maybe you just need to leave LA. That's an excellent point. Orange County is an interesting halfway house between where I live and other places. Natasha loves Florida because she's been there in November. And we'll see how much we love it in August. In fact, you don't have to wait till August. May will be plenty. I don't know. I just love I just love it. It's nice and cool outside. My wife is from Siberia. She's not in the mood for any more cold weather. I'm from Florida, and I'm not in the mood for any more hot weather. It presents a bit of a problem. There's snow on the mountains tonight here, and that never ceases to amaze me. You have to understand, if you're a kid that grew up in Bermuda and Florida, and snow is a metaphysical phenomenon for people like us. When I was 13, no, I was a little older, 14 maybe, 14 or 15, same old group, planetarium group, we went up to, I flew to relatives in Pennsylvania, and then we all drove back. But we went from Florida to Chadsford, Pennsylvania, where the Spitz Planetarium factory was, to see the new mods on this star projector so that we didn't constantly pour. I'm just going to tell this story again because I like it. I'm just in a chatty mood. I'm a chatty catty today. So we had, you got a star projector, right? It's got these 2 hemispheres, and I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when I got back from Thanksgiving. They took the star projector from the defunct planetarium. There's a brand new planetarium there now. It looks amazing. Moved the old planetarium machine into the Florida History Museum, which is really tiny, but at least it didn't end up in the trash. If it had ended up in the trash and I'd known about it, I would have bought it. Probably could have gotten it for $100, and I'd have it in my garage until I had a better place. I have it in the studio is what I do. I'd have it right over there, and I'd have it working too. Anyway, this is the perfect example of incrementally better ideas. So here you go. You've got this machine, and unlike the Zeiss Planetariums, which were, I don't know, 70 or 80 times heavier than this machine, the Zeiss Planetariums were made of pewter, I think, or some kind of high-density lead. They're just these monstrous, massive things. And they had these giant, huge clusters of lenses on it. And the way the Zeiss Planetarium would produce the sky is, if a star was going to be brighter than other stars, it'd be bigger. It'd be little circles. Oh, there's a bigger circle. That's got to be a brighter star. Absolutely artificial looking. When I first went to a Zeiss Planetarium after being in the Miami Planetarium, I said, this Zeiss Planetarium sucks. And I kind of want to think, I don't remember where he was. I do remember the name. The guy who the planetarium lecture might have been in Hayden in New York. I'm not sure. Anyway, first time I saw a Zeiss Planetarium was there was a legendary planetarium guy whose name was J.D.W. Stahl. J.D.W. Stahl was an old German astronomer working in the Zeiss Planetarium, and he would have his pointer, and he would point out this, and here is the constellation Orion, with the three stars which form the Welt, you know. Okay. But our planetarium machine had a arc light and tiny little pinholes, and it gave you a pretty realistic, in fact, it gave you a very realistic looking sky. I will get to that if you'll ask me that again, Marisha, when I finish with this boring story. I'll get on with that boring story. So, great. So you've got this thing that's producing a 360 degree in all direction, pushing out light from stars. The problem is that that light is also going to go down on the floor, right? Because you've got these two things that are lit up, and one of them's up, one of them's down, but whichever is up or down, there's light coming out on the floor. And it really spoils the effect to see the stars come down the walls and then just creep across the floor. So when they manufactured this Miami Planetarium, the Space Transit Planetarium made by Spitz Space Systems, they had to figure out a way to put a horizon on there. They had to figure out a way so that the light didn't shine below the horizon. So the big brains at Spitz said, all right, we got this hemisphere on one end. We're going to bolt this honking big arc light on here. We're going to move it around. And then around the arc light, we're going to put a very high quality glass sphere. And it'll be actually two glass spheres. So sitting around the lamp are these two crystal clear domes. And in between the domes is this thick, viscous red oil. And then we let gravity do the rest. So as this lamp would move up or down, the oil would always stay level on account of gravity and fluids and science. Right? So there we go. Well, this is marvelous, except that the problem is that those arc lamps had a tendency to explode. And as a person who was a console operator for 20 years of my life, I guess, the old ones especially, when they blew, you knew it. Maybe in the middle of a show and, I don't know, slide projector, BAM! Oh. Sorry. Stop the tape, lights up, planetarium. It's been ordered to produce an artificial horizon. Okay. So, in the olden days, when that happened, that was the end of the show. Because the repair for that was, even though there were little access panels on each end, when that happened, you had to take the whole star dome off. You had to pull out that broken glass. The oil is dripping out through the holes where the stars were. It's going down into the pit, which was this circular area surrounded by a little thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for this. If I can find it fast, I'll show it to you. I hope I can find it fast. It doesn't look like I'm going to find it fast. Oh, hey! Hang on. Hey! Okay, so back to the story. I showed these when my friend Phil was here. Yonder is Phil Trick, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, working on the Miami Planetarium star projector. And I'm looking for a picture of yours truly, which undoubtedly will be in here somewhere because that's there. Here's the view from my office. This is where I went to work every day for a number of years. I think I'll make this one a little smaller. This was completely unscripted, as you can tell. So this is the view from behind the console. I will say this, I don't know how interesting this story is, I suspect not very, but nevertheless, it is not often that you do get to hear the tales of a planetarium person talking about the travails of working in the planetarium. That's a view from the console, and I will see if I can find the one I'm looking for. By the way, Stephen Wright, it's the only person I ever heard who made a planetarium joke. Stephen Wright said, when I was young, teenager, I worked in a planetarium, and we developed a softball team, and we used to practice right there in the planetarium. And I'd be standing underneath Saturn, and the guy in center field would be standing underneath Mars, and the guy in right field would be standing underneath Jupiter. Finally went outside to play another team, and everybody was so far away. Hang on. if I don't find it fast, there's the, hey, there you go. Here's our sweet old girl in the museum. It's a nice picture of her, actually. That's when they would save the machine and put it into a different, took it from the Science Museum and put it in the History Museum, which is not a bad way to go. All these pictures of me, my God, I just want to spend hours just looking at all of them. But I think it's, hey, here, now we're getting there. Here's me at the time, approximately. I know I've shown these before, I don't care. You can see you're trained, highly trained, I might mention, your highly trained technical staff there, working on the little holes in the little lenses, because they did have tiny little lenses for the bright stars, and you get a little tiny little thing about, tiny little thing that said, this is Arcturus. It's the right color, it's the right brightness, put that in. Anyway, all of this to show you one picture, which I would like to find, and I suspect I will. Here it is. Here it is. Yep, that's yours truly, folks. Sorry about that. I know that's destroying a lot of deeply held fantasies. But when the planetarium finally shut down for 2 days because we couldn't take it anymore, we just had to deal with it. Those oil-filled hemispheres had ruptured so many times, 20, 30, 40 times since I started in 1974 there, 73, 74. The planetarium was installed in 76. And by the way, I'm not pursing my lips for effect. I'm probably about to issue a curse of some kind. Although I do have to say that burgundy-colored Kiana shirt is really quite fetching. After 7 years, there have been so many of these explosions in the star projector hemisphere there that the stars were getting clogged up. So they had to shut us down, and they had some excuse because they worked us like rented mules. We never had a day off, and the planetarium wasn't closed for years and years and years, not one day. Finally, they closed it down for 2 days, and we had a lot of work to do. And so being the senior member of the staff, myself, highest on the prestige level, of course, my job, once we had these 2 days of downtime, was to take all of these wooden things that you can see on the side there, which surrounded the pit, move them up out of the way, and then get a big old hunking thing of something or other, might have been less toil or something, and then go down into the pit and clean up that black goop, which is the result of 7 years or 8 years of oil that had dripped from the artificial horizon on the star projector. You can see a nice splotch of oil there on the left, on the base of the planetarium thing there, the star projector thing. Okay, so I was just talking about incrementalism and good ideas and bad ideas and all the rest of it. So here we are back in the present. Don't panic, I'm right here. I remember where I went off the rails on this one. So in 74, no later than 75, we all go up to Chadsford, Pennsylvania to Spitz Space Systems because the engineers at Spitz have come up with a solution to this problem. And I suspect that one of them came up with a solution to the problem because he went out on a small boat, because the problem was solved by the simple expedient of those little cup holders that you see, the little swiveling cup holders. The big brain said, instead of bolting this thing onto the end and surrounding it in this liquid and all this goop, why don't we just put it on a little fork and then just let it hang? Ta-da! So we went up there to see this thing in action, and it turns out that gravity is just as effective in Pennsylvania as it is in Miami, and so we decided we're going to get this thing installed on our thing. And then we still had lamp explosions, but they didn't destroy the room. They didn't create a second Everglades of toxic slush that I was tasked to clean out. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate you guys putting me down there so that nobody else got cancer. It's called a gimbal bill. Yes, that's exactly what it's called. I knew that. I just didn't remember. So the point of all this story is we were talking about California and how snow is a metaphysical experience for youngsters like us who grew up in warm climates, Bermuda and Florida and so on. And uh, went up to Pennsylvania, and I stayed in a motel room, I think, for one night with Jack Horkheimer. Now, if you ever saw Star Hustler or Stargazer, you might realize that this was maybe riskier than it may appear at first glance. And you know what? This is a chance for me. You know, the whole purpose of the show is I never have any idea what the hell I'm going to say. So let me say this now because this is actually important. I worked for Jack Horkheimer for on and off at least 20 years. He was without question the craziest person I've ever met, and also on most occasions the most unpleasant person I've ever met, certainly that I've ever worked for. I was having heart palpitations from stress and I was 14. That's the effect he had on people. He was just one of these kind of hysterical people. But he gave me all of my first breaks. He was the first person to ever pay me to write. He saw potential in me. I'm not going to tell that story again, but I was ready. I stood up and said, I can do this. And he gave me a chance to run shows, and I was 14 years old. 15 years old, I was a production manager. 15 years old, I was writing shows for people. And by the time I was 16, 17, I was writing all the shows at the Planetarium that he wasn't writing because he was doing Star Hustler. So he was a tough guy to deal with. And this is not particularly pleasant, but I do want to get this on the record. Not that it's going to matter because I don't guess anybody's paying much attention to this, but it needs to be said. And I finally just realized there's a chance to say it. Jack's final years were really, really terrible. They were Howard Hughes terrible. He had a house out in the middle of nowhere. Oh my goodness gracious. He had a house out in the middle of nowhere. I want to say out in Palmetto someplace, way out in the middle of nowhere, in, real secluded house. I just remembered something. So he was a very private guy and a very, very strange guy. He was a jazz musician before he became a Stargazer. He was known as Jack Foley, and he was a hell of a good jazz musician. So he lived out there on his own, and Jack was a strange dude. But the reason I was laughing is he was so... it's just like the show when Phil was here. He got so nasty that Phil and Doug and I, we used to think of ways to get even with him if cosmic justice were to ever show up. And there were 3 solutions that we came up with. He had this 1971 or 72 Cadillac Eldorado convertible as a classic American land yacht, just wider than 2 lanes of highway, and just, I want to think it was like a kind of a blue, and so he would get so hysterical with us and get us all so upset that we would just sit there for hours trying to think of ways that we could get back at him. Me, not just me and Phil and Doug, who were much older and maturer than I am. I looked up at these guys like they were gods. They were probably 23, 24 years old too. So we decided there were a couple things we could do. One thing we thought that we could do would be to to bring a concrete truck and fill his convertible up to the brim with concrete. That was like the first pass, and that was satisfactory. We were pretty happy with that. And then I don't remember if it was Phil or Doug, but somebody said, no, here's what we'll do. He said, okay, what we'll do is we'll go to the far corner. Right now, there's one person watching the show who's laughing too, because he's the only person who knows the rest of the story. So what we'll do is we'll go to like the far corner of his car, and we'll get a jack, and we'll jack his car up so that the rear of the car is in the air, but only by a millimeter. just so that the wheels are just off the ground, and then we're going to run in and I'll tell Jack that his house is on fire. Tell him his house is on fire, and he'll come running out and get in his car and start it up. And the wheels will just be spinning there. I thought, my God, that was funny. And then finally, I had a lot of fun with these guys. I really did. Finally, the prize-winning solution for Revenge on Horkheimer was that Jack had in his backyard a number of old cars. Classic cars, but they were returning to the ground from whence they came. They were just decaying into rust and iron. And he had like 4 or 5 of them out there. I'm pretty sure this was Doug Gagan's idea. He said, no, here's what we'll do. We'll wait till Jack is on a conference or something till he's out of town. And then we'll call a landscaping company. We'll call a landscaping company and get them in. We'll have them bring in just truckloads of dirt, and we'll cover all the cars with dirt, and then we'll put sod over them and plant trees on the top, palm trees. You'll come back and you'll just see this, just these little hills here where his car used to be. I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. That just got us through so much trouble. Anyway, so he was a tough guy to work with. But, for those of you handful of people who know him, Astronerd1 says that sounds like Doug. It does sound like Doug. Doug Gagan was a great guy. Here's Doug. Doug, I told this story when Phil was here too. Doug Gagan was the second greatest console operator to ever live, and he was so good we had him do a show blindfolded. So we brought him into the planetarium there, and then we put him behind the console. I saw this picture a second ago. Here it is. And we said, all right, Doug, nothing but slides and all hand, no animation, had to run all these slides, the Apollo sequence in Long Journey of a Young God. Put Doug behind the console there, right in front of our Voice of the Theater speakers, and you can't see that, but in frame here somewhere. Nope. Hang in there. There we go. Down here on the left, you can see all these buttons and knobs had to be turned live, and and they had to be turned live very, very quickly. And we said, all right, Doug, if you're so hot, do the Apollo sequence live, which is like Q. Down on the bottom left, you'll see 4 round dimmer switches, and then there's a little gap. Then off to the right, further towards the front of the room, there's another 2. Those were our main slide projectors. The 2 closest to the star projector were 5 and 6. They were the big center images. They were the ones that basically took front and center screen. So we had 5 and 6 in the front. We had 1 over here, 2 down there, 3 over there, 4. And Horkheimer, being a genius, did this whole history of the Apollo program in about 6 minutes. And so you've got this script, and it's Sally Jesse Raphael, who was a radio personality in Miami. She was just Sally Jesse then, and she's talking about the history of the Apollo program. So you're standing here like this, and you're looking down, and you've got a script, and after a while you get it memorized. It's like, this, 5 to 6, turn down 5, turn up 6, advance 5, and then 6 to 5, turn down 6 up, bring up 5, advance 6, and then and you go over here, 1 and 4 go up, 5 to 6, advance 5, 1 and 4 down, advance 1 and 4, 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 2, 5 and 6, 5 and 6, 2 down, advance 2, 1 and 4 up, 5 and 6, advance. This kind of thing is complicated. Plus you had to run the zoom, which is this device directly underneath. I don't have a pointer, although I had a pointer in the planetarium. If you look at the foundation, the fork that's holding up the star projector comes straight down. That line of 4 gauges and 4 switches with a big one, that was a zoom. I don't know if Phil built that. Somebody built it. And it had a 12-to-1 zoom ratio, and to make an image bigger, and we'd bounce it off a mirror so we could fly Jupiter and Saturn and all this stuff around the room and fly through the solar system, which is how we did things in the analog days. Okay, so Anyway, Doug did the whole thing blindfolded, and then he's supposed to point out Tycho on the moon. So over here, and he's got his tie on his eyes. Turn up 3. Okay, he reaches down here somewhere, finds the pointer in his hand, and he knows where it's about, and he just takes the pointer, just turns it on, and just goes like that, and we're watching, and it is dead frickin' center. That's it. We're done. All right, we're done. You win. Fortunately, I had a chance to practice for a couple decades after that. I think I was smoother than he was. Anyway, this fun story with a serious twist. So Jack's final days were horrific. I'll get to Apollo 8. Yes, his final days were really horrific. He became like crazy paranoid, and alone in his house, and all of the hygiene issues and medical issues and all. It was a complete frickin' tragedy and a catastrophe, and it still makes me sad. But here's the thing I wanted to say officially, just because I'd like somebody to say this officially. This kid, nope. This kid, nope. Hang on, I probably just, yeah. This kid spent a night in a hotel room with Jack Horkheimer. Jack Horkheimer, in his final days, was accused publicly by a guy who said that he forced him to have sex with him 10, 15 years ago, and was suing him. And this caused Jack an awful lot of absolute crazy anguish during the last couple years of his life, trying to defend himself against these allegations. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Jack Horkheimer was gay, but I never knew that. I didn't have the slightest idea. It never occurred to me. I just thought he was weird. It never, ever occurred to me. And if I'd been alive, I was alive actually, if I'd been aware of what was going on down there, I would have flown down and done an interview with the Miami Herald, and I would have said, I have been in close proximity to this man for 20 years. And, I mean, just look at me. I'm queer bait. Not exactly a term I've ever used on myself before, but nevertheless, seriously now, I would go down there and say, not only did he not ever do anything like that, he was so far away from doing anything like that to anyone in my presence that I cannot conceive of it. I would have been a character witness on this one. Jack claimed that this guy who was homeless needed a place to stay. Jack put him up in his house, probably gave him a lot of money, kept him alive and stuff. That sounds exactly like Jack Horkheimer, because Jack was a lonely guy. But when I heard that allegation, I just said, this guy's lying. He's doing it for the money. Hey, somebody's just put this in here. I don't know. Astronerd. Here's Jack. Here's Doug and his girlfriend in 1993. I think was the caption on this. There he is. There's that steely-eyed missile man right there. Still got that same droopy mustache. But there he is. Anyway, so I just wanted to say, on the record for what the record's worth, is that I think those charges were absolutely, completely baseless, cruel, and absolutely predatory. That person was just looking for money and slandered this guy, and I think it was absolute lie, and I just, ever since I heard the story of his final days, I've wanted to get that out of my system, and that's my chance. Anyway, all of this came from Why Are You Still in California? Jack Horkheimer and I spent a night in a motel in Chaddsford, Pennsylvania, and we were up in Pennsylvania. I said, it's going to get cold tonight, right? He said, yeah. I said, you think it'll get below freezing? Yeah, it's going to get into the high 20s. Really? Yep. So I took a glass of water, and I left it outside overnight, and when I came out in the morning, it had turned twice. I visited my grandfather in London when I was 16. They had just deregulated airfare, just. And a company called International Air Bahama was offering Miami to London for something like, I don't know, $270, $280. Now that'd be 1976 money, so that was more money then, but still, that was a quarter, maybe a fifth, a tenth even, of what airfare was. And so, well, hell, I'm going to go visit my grandfather in England. So the problem was, we had to go from, since it was International Air Bahama, it was flying from Nassau to Heathrow via Luxembourg. So we got in a Cessna 172 with a guy who knew how to fly one, and we flew out to Nassau, which was kind of fun. Landed. I spent 7 or 8 hours on the ground in Nassau. Grew up in Bermuda. The Bahamas is the nastiest place I'd ever been. I'd never seen some people so rude. I grew up on an island which was based on tourism just like the Bahamas, and I'm thinking to myself, you guys are going to be working in coal mines if you keep this up. If you think this is what's going to cause people to come back, you're out of your minds. I can't stand the Bahamas. Waited in Nassau for a while, flew to Luxembourg, and here's where the story gets interesting. And also, another example of what happens to me when I'm left unsupervised. So we got to Luxembourg, and I had a 12-hour layover there to go from Luxembourg to London. And got there in the afternoon, and first thing I did was I was hungry, so first thing I do is go to a restaurant, and since I'm in a foreign land, needless to say, I want to get a hamburger and a Coke. So I order a hamburger and a Coke, and they bring out a meatball on a couple of pieces of toasted bread, and they brought out a Coke that had no ice in it, obviously. And here's the thing about the Coke: it was a kind of a Coke glass, and up near the rim was a red line, and the red line said something like 0.3 L, like 0.3 liters, and somebody had filled that Coke up with an eyedropper because the meniscus of that just bisected that line. I was so disgusted by that. So anyway, now I've got another 5-6 hours to kill. So what am I going to do? I know, this is before security, all that nonsense. Hey, look, it's cold outside. It's winter. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to see if there's any snow or ice on the ground. And sure enough, there was. So I'm dressed in my best traveling clothes, and there's construction across the street from the airport. So I tootle on over there, and it's all this red clay. And I'm climbing up this red clay, and I'm seeing all these little frozen things of water. And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. It's freezing cold. Look at that. There's a little bit of snow and ice on the ground. Chunk, chunk, stomp, 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 crash, crash, crash. Cracking up the ice and stuff. Getting ready to go back to the hotel. I'm wearing my black shoes with the leather soles. And as I'm turning around, I lose my balance, and I slide face first down this red clay into this puddle of freezing water. This is absolutely true. And I get up, and I managed to smear this red clay into areas where it hadn't been before. And when I finally went back into the airport, they almost didn't let me in because I was just a crust of red. I looked like I looked like I was from Burning Man, you know. And so I flew from Luxembourg to London, covered in red clay. And when my uncle Ernie picked me up at the airport in Heathrow, he damn near turned around when he saw me coming out. Anyway, yeah, so that's what cold weather does for me. It's like, it's like, you know, Pandora. And that's why I'm still in California. That only took an hour and a half. Anyway, there you go. So, tales of a hot weather kid. But snow was mystical. Every time we'd come to Pennsylvania, is it going to snow? Probably not. What do you mean, probably not? We're here. It's cold. Yeah, but there's no... But we're here. It's very, very difficult to understand if you didn't grow up without snow. But one day on the way to high school, we saw... It was the only day it ever snowed in Miami. And there was a patch of snow approximately the size of... Oh, I don't know. 10 yards by 10 yards square, maybe. A little patch of snow on the ground. We're going to school in the morning, and they stopped the bus because because we were screaming at the top of our lungs. They stopped the school bus and let us go out and play in the snow, which was a micron thick. But there it was. So anyway, yeah, that's why I'm still clinging to California, because there's snow on the mountains, and it's sunny here, and there's never been weather like this. And I know I will get to Facebook. Have no fear, don't panic. Here, but one last thing, Marisha asked about Apollo 8. I was in Dallas. Got there Friday, and then on Saturday I gave they asked me to do a talk for the Young Republicans, and they wanted a Christmas theme, so they asked me to come in and talk about Apollo 8, which was a Christmas mission. I sat down and started making some notes, and I ended up making 5 hours of notes. And I'm going to turn that into the Moving Back to America show for Christmas, and we call it Message from the Moon. But the short form of it is, Apollo 8 was the greatest piece of improvisation in history. There was never an Apollo 8 mission. Didn't exist on the NASA plans. Didn't exist until right before Apollo 8 flew, and Apollo 8 basically jumped 3 steps because they didn't have a LEM, didn't have a lunar module. They were going to test the command module in orbit. They did that on Apollo 7. Apollo 8 should have been command and lunar module in Earth orbit. Okay, that didn't explode. Apollo 9 was supposed to be the command and lunar module in an eccentric orbit where you go, I don't know, a 30th of the way to the moon, but you go out pretty far and come back. Nope, we don't have a LEM, and we've got 13 months to make it before this decade is out. So they just said, well, we got a rocket, and we got a crew, we got a command module that works. F it, let's go to the moon. So they did. And yes, and Broke College student, you're a remarkable individual. You get major points here because he just put in the quote, and the quote was Frank Borman at the end of it, and says, "And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth." So it's a happy Christmas message. I started the speech by saying, well, I'm a conservative political commentator, and I spend pretty much every day talking about how America's going to hell, so it's nice to talk about when America went to the moon instead. So that went very well. Anyway, let's get on to the questions because that's what people want. They want their questions answered. I don't think it's overstating the case to say that I know exactly how Jesus felt, precisely how he must have felt. Feed us fish, Jesus, cure my leprosy, Jesus. It's constantly. In fact, probably make the case that a little tougher on me not being, divine and stuff. All right. Stratosphere Lounge, 21 questions. Comments, rather. We'll get to what we can. And there we go. All right, here we go. Martin Archer. I contend that the best designed American car of the last 40 years or more is the Dodge Challenger, the best since perhaps the original Challenger. What do you think? Needless to say, as a lifelong Camaro driver, I find you not only incorrect, but frankly, quite insane. I will tell you one thing. The Dodge Challenger had the best TV commercial ever created. That's without question. When I saw the TV commercial for the new Challenger, the Challenger reboot, and it's the British Army, and they hear this advancing sound, and they all look up in terror, and George Washington is driving a Charger with a giant American flag on the back, and it's George Washington driving. I thought that was the greatest ad of all time ever. If you haven't seen it, I'll show it to you. You know why? Because I want to see it again. That's why. Let's see if I can find it. It is an absolute classic. Hang on. I want to see it again, so you're going to have to just deal with the somewhat dead air. Let's go to YouTube. And then let's go to Challenger Ed Washington. And there it is. And so now I will download this baby. It's a 60-second commercial. That's quite a long commercial. It's epic. Here it comes. Copy the link. Go to my YouTube Ripper website. Enter the link. Start. Converting. 480p. I'll take it. Download. Converting. Download again. download again. Here it comes. That was fast. All right, brace yourselves. It's going to be small. I'll have to resize the window. It's the best car commercial of all time, and maybe the best commercial of all time.
Here's a couple of things America got right. Cars and freedom.
Shut up and take my money. Just shut up and take my money. Fabulous ad. Incredible ad. I'm so happy I saw that again. Makes me happy. Anyway, look, the Challenger is a great car. And it's a good-looking car, and they got the reboot of the Challenger right. They got the reboot of the Camaro right. I'm a Camaro guy. However, if you ask me what the all-time great American muscle car is, I would have to go with the second generation Corvette. 66 Corvette Stingray. Ice blue. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is the best looking American car ever made. That is a bitchin' machine, man. That is a bitchin' gorgeous, shockingly beautiful machine. 1966. Look at that thing. Man. And I've always loved the Corvettes. And the 2021's not bad either. If you can't afford the Jetsons, since somebody asked about, maybe a potential Christmas present, this is not a bad successor to that vehicle. There's the 2022 version. That is a badass looking car. Whoa! Man, that's beautiful. Man, that is just beautiful. That's just gorgeous. Burt Rutan has a previous model Corvette. I think it's a 2014. And Burt Rutan has a Corvette because Burt Rutan is a steely-eyed missile man. And he let me drive that car on a runway that was owned by my friend Brent Regan, who built his own hangar, built his own airplane, built his own airport. That's the kind of guy. It's what Brent does in his spare time. And I got a chance to take even a 2014 Vet on a runway, which is a straight line. It wasn't flat, mind you, but it was straight. And I hit the accelerator on that thing, and I blacked out. The whole landscape turned blue. And I look in the mirror and everything's turning red. And while the acceleration impressed me, the thing that impressed me about that Stingray more than anything was the braking. I didn't wait till last minute, obviously, because it's not my car. But I had that thing up to certainly 110, 115 miles an hour. And then I just sat on the brakes and it just stopped. Just stopped. Straight line, it just stopped. I can't explain it. No fishtailing, no squealing, nothing. I just sat and the car just stopped. I was so impressed. Anyway, there's no accounting for taste. And anybody who thinks that the Challenger is the best looking American car, I'm not going to argue with, because the Challenger is a damn good looking car. And it's not a frickin' Prius. So If that's your contention, you're not going to get an argument from me, Martin. It's a fine, 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 extremely good-looking, very capable second-place car. That's the Camaro owner speaking. All right. It says view 9 more comments. What happened to my 21 comments? All right, Eric Blake. Here we go, Eric. I know you're practically. I see you quiver in anticipation. Hey, Bill, here's perhaps the most vitally important question regarding Elon Musk that one could possibly imagine. So when you finally do get to meet our favorite mad genius of the stars, and I wonder if you haven't already, by the way, I have not, and talk shop, what would be the first thing you'd want to ask? Our hopes and dreams are with you, Sir Hail Vectron. If I had a chance to talk to Elon Musk, I would say, Elon, the best way to get people to really understand what it is you're doing is to find somebody who had a combination of technical knowledge about every aspect of rocketry, science, orbital mechanics, and at the same time had the artistic ability to write about it in a poetic way so that somebody could not only explain the experience in an emotional sense, but could also explain why the emotional sense comes out of the hardware. I think that's the most important thing you could do with your future. And then I would stand there and look like this. See if I can get bigger puppy dog eyes. Yeah, that would probably just scare him. That's the honest truth. That's what I tell him, and I'm not being facetious here. I actually think, in fact, I don't think I know. I don't think I know either. I don't think that there's anybody who could do that job better than me. I really don't. And I would send him a link. I don't think he's seen the Apollo 11 What We Saw series, but I'd send him that, and I'd say I can do this for you, and I want to do this for you and for the species. And I'm not saying you owe me, but I am saying that I'm holding a receipt that I never got the product for. Here's my Apollo space kit. I'm supposed to be in space by now. I was supposed to be in space 30 years ago. I'm not holding this against you. You were 11. But that said, you should send me because I'm the only person I know, and I may be the only person there is that has those Venn diagrams overlap to that degree. There are science writers and there are scientists, there are engineering writers, technical writers, and there are engineers, but I don't know anybody who can play both sides of that coin the way I can, and I would be the guy to do it. And I'm still thinking, strangely enough, there may be a chance of that. We'll see. All right, Jim Samples. Hey, Bill, with the safety protocols now built into rockets, we're talking rockets, that are launched into space, i.e. the capsule on the Jeff Bezos rocket escapes to safety and parachutes to the ground in case of a launch failure, the left no longer has a valid argument for not supporting loading those capsules with spent nuclear fuel and sending them to the sun. Yes, that's true. Now, Jim, I don't know if you're being facetious or not. I suspect it's a little bit of both. That's a serious question. Why not? You want to deal with nuclear waste? Why not just send it to the sun? Or it'll burn up forever. Yeah. I have an easier idea, though, something a little less technically difficult and somewhat less risky. How about if we just bury it someplace? I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box here. Why don't we find a big honking hole in the ground out in the middle of nowhere and bury it and then cover it up? That's what I would do with it. See, the problem with uranium is it's heavy. And when you're trying to get things in the air, heavy's not your friend. You don't need to send it to the sun. You can bury it perfectly well. And by the way, now that the outrage is kicking in, and once again I'm feeling this lost future, we talked about atomic power last time. By the way, the complaints about using, was it Yucca Flats? Is that it? Is it Utah? these giant salt caverns, natural salt caverns, or maybe it's a salt mine. I don't know. It's way, way, way beneath the surface of the earth, and it goes on for miles. And it's surrounded by salt, and it's geologically stable, and all of this stuff. And the frickin' progressives, these losers, these whining, virtue signaling crybaby weenies, say, well, we can't bury it there because it'll be radioactive for 100,000 years. And what if 100,000 years from now, a species comes along or mankind comes along and they don't know about the signs and stuff? We would be poisoning them. I'd be saying to myself, well, we'd be poisoning them if they were able to dig a couple miles underground in that exact location in the middle of nowhere. But put that aside for a minute. If they're able to dig that deep, chances are they've probably figured out the thing about radioactivity. And frankly, if they haven't, then F them. You know, if the human race has fallen to the degree where it's like caveman noises and we could sit around our campfire, we're eating our rats on a spit, and somebody comes back and says Jorg and Jarg and Brink have gone out into the desert and they haven't come back, they've died and they've been sick, and there's an evil spirit out in the middle of the desert that's killing people. I say, swell, that's what you deserve. That's what you get for not, paying attention. Yeah. So you've got an evil spirit that lives out in the desert that affects 5 people 100,000 years from now. That's F them. If you don't have a Geiger counter 100,000 years from now, you have no excuse. That's the way I look at it. I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for you. We've had Geiger counters certainly since the 20th century and probably earlier. What happens if somebody... These are the same people that say, you know what an asteroid is? It's a big rock in space. How many do you think there are? I don't know, a couple hundred. Well, there's probably millions of them. We certainly know where hundreds of thousands of them are. We know all their orbits and stuff. Any desire to see them? Nope. Any interest in where they are? Nope. Know what they look like? Nope. Know what they're made of? Nope. So you don't mind if I go out there and mine them then? How dare you spread the cancer of capitalism throughout the solar system and believe this must be left to blah, 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 blah. Worst thing that could happen to humanity is that they find life on Mars. That would be really, really tough. Because then we would have all of these Karens with a new cause, Well, there's leeches on the bottom of this rock we found on the far side of this planet, and we can't go to Mars because the planet belongs to the leeches. Well, why don't we just take a bunch of those leeches and recreate the conditions that make good Martian leeches, and why don't we just grow like billions of them and see if they're good on pizza? I'm old-fashioned in some ways. Yo, Bill, here's a question on Elon Musk. Is this a repost? No. You may recall my question way back about the plans for an orbital hotel. Well, if Elon Musk were announced his intent to build a permanent orbital space station, position where it's supposed to be, of course, Russia, that includes such a hotel, would you think it would motivate Bezos and the other would-be competitors to get off their butts and build their own? Civilian space hotel equals major potential profits after all, and if Musk were to announce that it can be done, wouldn't the other guys want to do it first? All I need to know about Jeff Bezos, I learned from the fact that when Elon Musk and SpaceX got the contract for the lunar lander, the first thing that Jeff Bezos did was sue the government to stop him. He sued the government to stop progress because some other company was doing what he was supposed to be doing, and that he had the money. Musk was down to his last rocket, I think I heard. That he was on his last, if this Falcon launch fails, then that's it. Bezos has had billions of dollars for forever. And the first thing he does when he loses this contest to put people on the moon, because he doesn't have the technology, because he never took it seriously, first thing he does is sue Elon Musk and push the return to the moon back a couple years, just out of spite. F him. Bezos can build a rocket, and I would put him in it, and I just make sure it's pointed the other way. I would put Bezos into something that had a big, heavy iron drill on the front end, and I would start that thing spinning, and I'd turn it upside down, and I would light that rocket, and I would just let it go as deep as it would go, and then I would shovel the dirt into the hole, and I'd drive away with whistling a happy tune. He's an awful person. He's an awful, awful person. I always thought he was just kind of a poser when it comes to space. So is Branson. Branson's a poser, and Branson's an evil bastard too. And someday I'll tell you how I know what an evil bastard he is. But no, they're not the answer. The answer is Musk, and people like Musk, and Musk should have competition. I bet you Musk is still enough of a human being that he would welcome competition. In fact, I know he would. If somebody were to do something that were to leapfrog Elon Musk, you would get a congratulatory tweet that instant, and probably something that says along the lines of, now we're going to have to work harder. That's the difference between Musk and Bezos and all the rest of them. When I found out that he sued the government over this and pushed back the landing date, I lost my mind. I was so damn upset. Just awful. We did an episode today. I think it opens today on Right Angle. We shot it yesterday. Yes. And Musk was named Man of the Year, and I talked about the ownage of Elizabeth Warren. And Steve said he's probably Man of the Century. It's a young century yet, but it's the century's 21% done. And I know a lot of people don't think as highly of Musk as I do, and I understand Musk has his downside, and I understand he's taking government subsidies and so on, but he's also providing a service. He's not just taking them. I'm used to living in a world where people take tax money and then you don't see anything done with it. With that said, they're rebuilding LAX really spectacularly, and that's only 30 years overdue. But he's making things happen, and he's and I think that when I look at Elon Musk, it makes me so proud that an African American can do these things, and show the world. And the first private astronaut in space was also an African American, a guy named Mike Melville, who I know personally, who worked on my vehicle, worked on my engine, shoulder to shoulder. First civilian astronaut, nicest guy in the world. You want to talk about a steely-eyed missile man? What this guy's been through, you haven't got any idea. He's telling these stories, and I'm just like, I can feel my blood chilling. And he's like, and then we did this. Burt Rutan built a military aircraft called the Ares, and it was supposed to be a potential successor to the A-10. And like everything else that Burt designs, it's wicked cool looking. It has been modified 100 times since, and now it looks like a box that somebody pasted some wings onto. But the original version of the Ares was just a wicked cool looking machine. And he put that big old honking gun in the Ares because if you're going to replace the A-10, you got to have the big honking gun. I'm talking to Mike Melville about this. Mike Melville flew the test flight of the Ares as a demonstration for the Pentagon. And the A-10 is a light aircraft, but it's still, big old twin engine thing and aluminum and steel frame. The Ares was made out of carbon fiber. It was incredibly light. And just to give you an idea of the kind of guy Mike Melville is in this paper light airplane that's built around the most powerful gun ever made. And he's rolling in on this target like this. And I was talking with Mike about this at lunch, just the two of us. I would have paid real money for that opportunity. But he didn't charge me. He didn't even charge me for the work he did on the engine. We're at lunch and he's talking about rolling in on this target with the Ares. And he said, I pulled the trigger on that gun and I think the plane flew backwards. I said, that seems like what it would be like. No, it's like you drove the thing into a concrete wall or a train. There was so much recoil that it actually made me feel like the plane was flying backwards all of a sudden. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Steely-eyed missile man. So I don't. Musk, Bezos. Well, Bezos he's a evil guy, and he's a big part of this giant tech thing, and it doesn't escape me that if a lot of small businesses or even larger retailers like Macy's or something like that, if they go out of business on account of nobody coming to visit them because of the coronavirus, then guess who benefits from that financially? F. Bezos. Bezos is a punk. Tell him I said so. Jason Rasmussen, what is your line in the sand for moving out of California, and where would you go? Well, we talked about that before, so I'm not going to get into the reasons why I'm still here, but nevertheless. Um, well, the line in the sand, Justin, would be if they actually came and knocked on my door and said we want your guns. But that's no longer my line in the sand because, of course, I lost all my weapons in that tragic boating accident. Um, they're getting pretty close with this vaccine passport mandate. My wife and I got turned away from a restaurant because we refused to show our papers to go out to dinner in the United States, at least in name anyway. And so the honest answer to this first part of this question is what's the line it'll take. It's a waiting game. I'm in a Mexican standoff with the state of California. We're both looking at each other, guns drawn, and waiting for the other one to blink. Uh, California is trying to figure out something that I simply will not, that will make life completely intolerable here instead of just annoying and soul destroying. Um, but gun confiscation would be one of those things, especially after the example of Australia, which I simply cannot believe actually is still occurring. But my God, Australia, what the hell? We turn all our guns in. What could possibly go wrong? Australia's a loose Western country. They're the most laid back people in the world. Prime Minister of Australia basically was saying, yeah, like getting the last of these people vaccinated, it's kind of like getting sheep through the gate. I saw this today. Now, in fairness, getting sheep through the gate is a big deal in Australia because there's an awful lot of wool in Australia. Australia is a sheep country. Not the people, at least not until recently. But that was what he basically said. And that's exactly what he said. And people are saying, oh, yeah, well, that's basically how I look at it. There's something wrong with that guy, too, that Australian Prime Minister. Something that guy looks like he belongs to, like he looks like he came out of the cast of The Prisoner, you know? That Australian Prime Minister looks like he was the guy who was not the head bad guy in The Prisoner, but kind of the guy who brought the head bad guy his coffee. So that's it. And then in terms of where I would go, I don't know. Jason, Natasha really, really, really likes Florida. She likes it a lot, and that's because she's been there in November. Um, and it's different in August, and it's different in May. In fact, it's May through October. So I don't know. She really wants to go there because she's from Siberia and she likes warm weather. I don't want to go there because I'm from Florida and I don't like hot weather. We'll figure out something. There's a big appeal for Texas because of the dynamicism of Texas. By the way, I didn't know this until I did this event in Texas. I didn't know that there's a pledge for the Texas flag. I did know that Texas, one of the requirements for entry into the Union was that Texas said, we're keeping our flag. Well, that's no problem. All states have their own flag. Yeah, but we're going to fly our flag at the same height as the American flag or else you can go pound sand. Really? Yep. All right, then. And whenever you drive through Texas, you see the U.S. flag and the Texas flag side by side at exactly the same size, exactly the same height. And they have a pledge to I pledge to the Texas flag, something like that. And I closed my Apollo 8 speech by saying, I don't know when we're going back, but if we are going back, it's going to be launched from Texas. Well, the rocket's going to be built in Texas anyway. Obviously there's a bunch of places I'd rather go than Florida or Texas, honestly. I have one state in mind in particular, but this is the thing about being married. You can't just do that. So we'll see. It's possible someday that I might be able to rent a place in both places. Probably could afford to rent a place in my undisclosed location and in Florida for what I'm paying for rent here. And then you could do summers up there and winters down there, and you'd be okay. Colorado is, Colorado, the governor, Steve just did an episode where the governor suddenly started talking sense. And Colorado is beautiful, but my wife loves the warm water. What can I do? I don't know, Bart, I'm looking. Let's see. Oh, these are most relevant questions. Why can't we just get the comments as comments? Hang on. That's why it's only showing 9. All comments. Eric Blake, Jim Samples, Trevor Duell. Hang on. Let's get to Bart here because we don't want any aneurysms. Would that be you, Bart Hennen? No, I'm pulling you like there, pal. I'm going to go with that because Bart is not that common a name. So I'm going to assume it's Bart Hennen. And if I'm wrong, I'll read another one. Here we go. Hey, Bill, from your series Apollo Cold War Heroes, you said you had way more writing than time allowed and you had to edit tons of stuff out. Why not use that additional writing and publish a series of books on Amazon? Could have a series of 3 to 6 books for each of the 3 from sales of your fan and members alone. Would boost the book sales and create exposure to a wider audience. Amazon gives a search boost to books doing good sales in the first 30 days. You already have the stuff basically written. Why not leverage it into an additional revenue stream and exposure avenue? That is a remarkably, astonishingly great idea, which has actually occurred to me. But Bart, that's not my property. It's a work for hire, and I don't own it. Daily Wire does. I've talked to them about this kind of thing, and they've been extremely polite about. Well, let us think about it. So that's your answer. And just so we're crystal clear about this, I do not have the least problem with this whatsoever. You know, I knew what the deal was when I signed it, and I was very glad to do it. And they're an actual business that's run by actual businessmen, and I don't plan to tell them, what to do. It has crossed my mind to look. Here's the thing, right? This is a small little operation, and what we have is we got some good creative talent, but we don't have a big business brain here. In fact, we've got an anti-business brain here running the show. Marusha says, why don't you turn your firewalls and afterburners into books? As it turns out, I've already done that. I've already collated them, still collating, and pulled the best of them, and I was going to make it and for a while it was a membership sign-up benefit. But I've got a best of afterburner, best of firewall series of the original essays. The thing about the Cold War Apollo and American Heroes thing, American Heroes, for example, the audio version is in many cases a quarter of what was written. And it's better. But if you like the details, then there's a lot of really cool stuff that got left out, especially on John Paul Jones. There's so much of John Paul Jones I had to cut. John Paul Jones, when I was finished with it, I think it was easily 4 times what the maximum was. And it was so overwritten that I couldn't start cutting it. I really just had to take a brand new document and go through it and say what absolutely positively has to be there and drag those things over. And then that took up the entire length of the thing, and I had to cut some of those, and then I stitched them together. But in terms of how it came out of my head, chronologically, there's just so much detail there, so much detail. And, there you go. Eric in the comment section says, the thing that irritates me about how Daily Wire is doing things, all their awesome projects are behind a paywall. How exactly are you going to influence the culture if the choir are going to have access? This is why Daily Wire is a several $100 million company, and I'm a several $1,000 company. They're businessmen, and while I wasn't happy about them about taking down the stuff from YouTube, it's a complete contradiction of many of my values to have any kind of problem with this. And I don't have a problem with it. It's not like I've got a problem with it and I'm covering it up. I don't have a problem with it. They paid me for their property. They own it. They can do whatever they want with it. And I am fully aware of that. And they run a successful business because they make business decisions. And not only do I not have a problem with this, it's like this is you want to talk about sustainability? This word of the century, sustainability. Sustainability is profitability. That's the absolute essence of it. And that's true for everything. It's true for organisms, true for bacteria. Sustainability is profitability. If it doesn't grow and maintain itself, then it's going to simply go extinct. And that's all there is to it. So they can do whatever they want with it. Now, a different question is, what about producing them on my own? That's an entirely different issue. They own the words, but they don't own the history. I wouldn't want to do this to them, but it's certainly legal, and I don't think it's unethical either, frankly. If I wanted to, well, let's take a specific example. I want to make a movie. I want to make a movie about Taffy 3. I can't believe that there hasn't been a movie made about it. The story of Taffy 3 is the most amazing true story I've ever heard. It is so perfectly created from a dramatic point of view that I cannot credit that it actually is real. But nevertheless, that is the truth. What happened on October 24th, 1944 is the most amazing thing ever. And I did show Jeremy, my friend Jeremy, I showed him the animation thing. I only showed it to him a week ago. He's been very, very busy lately, but he wrote me back with very, very, very nice comments. And I said, look, there might be, he's because he's ahead of the curve, that guy. He's been very interested in things like Unreal Engine, and he's interested in things like those LED walls and stuff that they use to do Mandalorian. And he's got the resources to actually do that. And Jeremy and I have been talking about feature films since we started Declaration Entertainment in 2010. Declaration Entertainment was Jeremy Boring and me. I had a small bay in one room and he had a small bay in the other. We had offices in a building. Time went on. Jeremy got involved with Ben and started really making big progress, and I kind of went off on my own. But basically, Declaration Entertainment was just the two of us for years. And Declaration Entertainment survived on my fans becoming members of Declaration Entertainment. And then when I went off on my own, brought the fan base over. That said, I think there is a role for where these two things overlap. We've been talking about feature films, fiction department films for a long time, but the success of the historical documentaries of Apollo and Cold War and America's Heroes for Daily Wire, they've been tremendous successes. I mean, I think all three of them got to be the number 2 podcast in the world in all categories on Apple. I know it was true for America's Forgotten Heroes. Number 2 in the world. That's not a bad start. And so I think that something that could happen very quickly is I could have a conversation, and I've started this conversation, and basically say, listen, you go back and listen to the America's Forgotten Heroes episode on Ernest Evans. There's the story of Taffy 3. We can make that movie, and we can make it cheap. I said, have you seen Greyhound, the Tom Hanks movie? He said, no. I said, if you get a chance, try to make a point to watch that. It's not a very good movie, really. But, by happy coincidence, Greyhound, starring Tom Hanks, is a story about an Atlantic convoy in a Fletcher-class destroyer. And USS Johnston was a Fletcher-class destroyer. And so when you look at Greyhound, you can see that you essentially have one set that's the size of a small room, which is the bridge of the Fletcher-class bridge. The control room is shockingly small. You basically have a couple of very, very tiny sets. You have, and everything else is CG. And it's kind of CG that looks good to the eye. You're still having a problem with humans. But it is the most amazing dramatic story ever, and every element of it is amazing. It's a much better story than Greyhound, and I can't believe no one's done it. And besides, it doesn't take place in the stormy, gray, cold, North Atlantic. It takes place in the beautiful blue Pacific on a morning. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. This thing happens. It was done by 9:30, and all of it. And Ernest Evans being a full-blooded American Indian, and all of that stuff. And you could do this really quite inexpensively. And I was thinking, we do this with live action. Let me show you a picture of Ernest Evans. Everybody should know this man's face. He's shameful. I think there only is 2 pictures of him at all. Yeah. God, what a Chad this guy was, man. So here's Ernest Evans. Commander, oh my God, that's small. Commander of USS Johnson, there he is. What a frickin' stud. This guy is, if you don't know the story, and I'm certainly not going to repeat it again and again and again, but this guy is everything. And I'm looking at this face, and I thought, who could play him who's on the team? And I thought, I bet you Dean Cain could do it. I bet you Dean Cain could get pretty close to that. Now, Dean have to put on a little weight, but Dean Cain could get close enough to sell it. Dean Cain's a good actor. He's a real good actor. And so there you go. So I'd like to tell that story. And I'd like to tell the other one I really want to do is very offbeat. I want to tell the story of Treblinka so badly I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Aesop said, didn't they find the Johnson at the bottom of the Marianas Trench? They did. Now, originally, the first discovery just showed a bunch of twisted wreckage, but apparently somebody went back, and I don't know whether they found the same Fletcher, because there are 3 Fletchers down there. There's the hole and the it's another H word. The Johnston, the hole, and the I'm not going to look at the comment section. I can't remember. We lost 3 destroyers and a destroyer escort. We lost the Samuel B. Roberts. The whole, I can't. Somebody's going to tell me. All right, I give up. Anyway, so there's 3 Fletcher-class destroyers down there in a relatively small area. The whole, Heerman, the Heerman. I beat it. I beat the comment section. Hole, Heerman, and Johnson were the 3 Fletchers that went down, plus the Butler-class destroyer escort, which was the Samuel B. Roberts. But they did find I think they did a second team, a completely different team, and they found the Johnson. And it's actually in really good shape. And there's the number on the bow. So whether those are the same piece of wreckage, I don't know. But the second trip was really impressive. And that's a nice kind of button on it. Same way the Titanic has got kind of a nice button, what am I trying to say here? Cameron's decision to set the Titanic story in the present and do it as flashbacks was really added a lot to that story. You certainly could have told the story without that. But the fact that you start off in the present and you know that the Titanic is a wreck, and you start off with the wreck, and then you go back and see it is a lot more magical than just starting the story with Jack getting the lucky ticket, because you didn't have to have any of that Bill Paxton stuff. Didn't need to be there at all. But I think he made the right decision to do it, because Titanic is a shipwreck, and it was clever to start off with it as a shipwreck and end with it as a shipwreck, and then in between that show it as a living creature, so that at the end, when the last survivor dies, you can then go back to it as a metaphysical destination, as a kind of a heaven. That was really great writing, great storytelling. So you could do that with the Johnson too. There it sits at the bottom of the ocean. It is the deepest shipwreck. Might be shipwreck. Certainly, without question, it is the deepest warship ever dived on. I think it's the deepest shipwreck ever discovered. It's in nearly, I want to say it's nearly 17,000 feet of water. Titanic's in 12,000, and it might be deeper than that. I don't remember, but it's really down there. Hang on a second. Yep, deepest wreck ever found. And I've got a link here from the comment section. I think is in the questions too. So I'm going to get through all these Facebook questions today, because I said I would. So anyway, yes, there's something that I think could happen there. And the nice thing about that is at 21,180 feet, that's pretty damn deep. I got it tapped, so I'm going to check it in a minute. And to be honest with you, the story of Taffy 3 is a really inexpensive story to tell. It really is, because almost all of the heavy lifting is done by computer graphics. And if you saw Greyhound, computer graphics loves metal surfaces. Any kind of a metal surface has been photorealistic for decades. If you're not familiar with DCS, Digital Combat Simulator, there are, and that thing runs at 60 frames a second. There are many, many, many images from DCS that I look at and I say, I simply cannot tell if that's, if you showed me that, just shown it to me, I never would have known that it was a computer graphics. So metal surfaces, very good. Water used to be a real problem, but water has now become very, very, very good water simulations. It's just a particle issue. We know how particles behave, and frankly, if you want to do the bow wake on a ship and you've got 100,000 particles, then you have to make the particles a little bit bigger and the granularity is not so good. But if you can do it with 10 million particles, it's indistinguishable. And so you've got the hard metal ships and you got the water. Then all you've got is a live action crew. Virtually all of this takes place inside the control room of the Johnson, the control room of the Roberts, both of which are small. And then you've also got some action on the bridge of the Yamato, which is a little bigger, but no big deal. You don't need any names for it. It'd be nice to get big names, but my God, man, if there's ever a story that had the ability to tell itself, I mean, this is it. And it's nonstop action. That's the next thing. And it is heroism on so many levels, in so many places. And if I had a chance to do that, I would not. The first thing you would see is a title card, and the title card will say, what you are about to see is not based on a true story. It is a true story. This is as accurate as we can make it in terms of every single detail actually happened like this. Yeah, John said you could do that in real time for a movie. You could. You pretty much do it in real time graphics. So you don't have render farm issues. You don't have big CG issues. You don't have to design all of these shaders. It's all there. It's all there in Unreal 5. It looks great. I've seen water and flame simulations in Unreal 4 and 5 that are absolutely. Look, there's a couple things I know about, and I can go out and walk out any evening, pretty much anywhere, and tell you what that star is right there. That's something I know. And I also know computer graphics because I've been working with them since 3D Studio version 2, which came out on 57 floppy disks in 1990. It's the first time I started using 3D software. So I know what good CG looks like. I know what bad CG looks like. And the CG is there. So all you really need is a live action cast. You don't have a big costume thing. You don't have a lot of big sets. If I were going to tell the story and write the script the way I'd want to, the most complicated scene would be the christening of the Johnson. And that's just a bunch of people on the fantail of a ship. And since you're dealing with it as a wide to mid shot, you could essentially have the entire crew be CG humans and not tell the difference. You're not getting close enough to see. It's just that Ernest Evans' speech when that ship was commissioned, he called the whole crew together, got them together on the fantail. He had a bunch of people there for the launching of this thing, and he basically said, I intend to put this ship in harm's way. I'm never running from another enemy again. He was in, was it the Battle of the Java Sea? I think it was. In the first days of the war, and I mean like 3 or 4 days after Pearl Harbor, 3 or 4 days after Pearl Harbor, it's a great point, by the way, Furball, I'm going to get to that. The Japanese were just moving everywhere, and we were just getting wiped out. ABCD forces, so it'd be Australia, Britain, United States, America, Britain, the Dutch, and the Australians had combined fleets in the Southeast Pacific, or like I said, be the Southwest Pacific, and they just sank everything. We'd go and try and stop a landing, and they'd have 3 destroyers, and we'd send 4 cruisers and 9 destroyers, and they'd sink most of the cruisers and half of the destroyers, and one of their destroyers would get a little mark on it. So they were just unbeatable. And Ernest Evans was an officer. He wasn't a commanding officer. He was an officer on a cruiser that ran away from the Japanese in those early days of the war. And if he hadn't run away, he'd be at the bottom of the ocean. And this offended his fighting spirit so much that he swore to himself on the spot, if I ever get command of a vessel of any kind, even if it's a laundry ship, even if it's the USS Walter Mondale, I am never going to run from an enemy. I'm just not going to do it. I will ram them if I have to, but I'm not going to go through this again. And he said that when they commissioned the ship. So he's sitting there champing at the bit, and he finally got his chance. He took his destroyer during, I think it was the Guam landings before Leyte Gulf. He took his destroyer in so close to the shore to provide artillery support for the Marines that he was receiving small arms fire from pistols fired by Japanese officers. He'd just get the whole crew out there. They'd take whatever rifles were on board the ship and start firing at the Japanese on the shore. And one of the moments that has to be in this thing, because one of the main storytelling elements that have to be there, is the relationship between Captain Evans and his gunnery officer, Bob Hogan? Robert, oh, come on. His gunnery officer. There's a moment that actually happened where he's brought the Johnson so close to shore, and he's providing support for all these Marines, and his gunnery officer's up in the gunnery observation tower. Hagen, I think maybe it's Hagen, and he's up there, and he sees, and I mean 100 yards away, 200 yards away, he's looking through these enormous magnifying things that are designed to hit ships 6-7 miles out, and he looks over on the beach, and he sees a Japanese officer get up with a samurai sword, and he can see there's a bunch of Japanese behind him, and he's just about to start a samurai charge on these Marines. Well, he's got all five of the 5-inch gun turrets on the Johnson are slaved to the gun director, and so he sees this guy get up and raise his sword. So Hagen just pulls the firing trigger, and 5-inch guns fire at this guy at the same time, Robert Hagen, and he turns into pink mist, and that's the end of the samurai charge. And Evans gets on the horn and says, "That's very good shooting, Mr. Hagen, but we need to be a little more careful with our use of ammunition in the future." This is the thing about Evans, and this is this story, Taffy 3 story, has to be the story of Evans, the relationship of Evans and Hagen, and then also the captain of the Samuel B. Roberts, who's made out of the exact same stuff. So that's a nice kind of a B story cutaway. You go from the Johnson to the Roberts, spend some time on the Yamato to see what the Japanese are thinking. You spend some time on board the Fanshawe Bay to see what Ziggy Sprague is thinking, and that's how you tell that story. Hagen said, they're following. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to get some of it out of my system. They're sailing along happy as can be, fat and happy. You know, they've got the whole northern exposure is guarded by Halsey's entire fleet of fast battleships and fast carriers. So he's in unstoppable force guarding the back door. Halsey decides to make a run for it, takes his battleships with him, doesn't tell anybody. So they're sailing along, and the first thing you know that there's any trouble is they see these splashes of colored dye. That alone is visually very dramatic. Psh, psh, psh. My God, somebody's shooting at us. And they look on the horizon, and they see all these pagoda masks coming over the horizon, and it's the Yamato throwing shells 26 miles out or something. And all of these guys seem, I don't have it written, it's written in my head. I told the story, I know this story backwards and forwards. And they all come out of the Johnson is the tail end destroyer. And they all come out of the control room and look back, and they can see this most powerful Japanese surface fleet ever assembled running them down, they're 15 knots faster than they are. Because not the destroyer's fastest thing on the water, but they gotta shepherd these jeep carriers that are doing 16 knots or something. And they see this force on the horizon, and my God, it's like it's here comes Goliath. I mean, it's freaking, it's a Transformer army coming at him. And Hagen goes back into the control room, and then Johnson comes back into the control room. I'm sorry, not Johnson. Ernest Evans comes back into the control room, and Hagen says, "I knew we were in trouble the second he came back inside because his eyes were on fire." He said, "I knew we were in for a real rough time just from the look in the skipper's eyes, because you could tell he'd been waiting for this for 3 years. This is a gift from God. Hard left rudder, all head flank." He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't radio for authority. He just guns this thing and turns that Johnson around, and that one destroyer by himself goes sailing into this thing. The one turret on the Yamato weighed more than the Johnson. And they had 3 or 4 battleships, 5, 6 cruisers, 10 destroyers. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable story. Unbelievable over and over and over again. Unbelievable. So there's that. Let's see here. Trevor, hey, just to follow up on your Arlington band story from a few weeks ago, it's likely that what you heard on the day of your father's service was fanfare from God of our fathers. I keep digging to try and find a recording and confirm this. Also been trying to get this 3-minute video too, however I can. I'm sure the regulars, that's sick of me posting it. We're never sick of it. I'm a mercurial chap. I'm hard to reach. Because there are times when most of the time I just kind of have to put blinders on because of information overload. So don't ever get tired of trying to do that. It's a tribute for the 80th Pearl Harbor Division Band. Honor, consider a personal favor if you would please watch it. I will watch it. I will watch it. I will watch it right now. I'll tell you what I will do. Actually. I've got the thing open, and I will watch it as soon as I'm done with the show, and then I think maybe I can play it on the next Stratosphere Lounge. That would be really great. So thank you for constantly trying to send it to me, and forgive me for being so hard to reach. So let me have a look at that, and as I mentioned on the Arlington thing, the power of that band, the power of the military in terms of memorial services, funeral services, the amount of comfort they provide it's amazing. It's unbelievable. So that's what I'll do. I will I'll take a look at it as soon as we're done with the show, and then it'd be great if it was the same music, and then hopefully I can put it up. Next week. So let's see, we get a couple more in here. Eduardo Henrique, greetings, Bill Wazard 13 here. I finally concluded, hello Wazard, my master's degree in automation and robotics, and now am on the look for work. Given the current situation in Germany and Europe, lockdowns, Greens and Social Democrats won election and imminent war on Ukraine, I'm very tempted to emigrate to Red U.S. Problem is, a legal skilled engineer is not what the current administration seems to be allowing in. No, you're absolutely right, Wazer. The problem is, see, the reason you're disqualified from entering the United States is that you're hardworking, you're intelligent, you've dedicated your life to a life of discipline and skill, and you provide a genuine service to people. That unfortunately disqualifies you from entering the United States at this time. Problem is, a legal skilled engineer is not what the current administration seems to be allowing in. My people here suffer this eternal curse of blind trust in authoritarians, and I long realized the fall of the wall did not teach them anything, then that if the fall of the wall did not teach them anything, then nothing ever will. I am aware this is neither your specialty or field of knowledge, but if you have any tips or takes on that, I'd appreciate it. Best regards and best of luck. Thank you, Eduardo. We have a friend of ours named Julius who originally lived in my gosh, Julius, you'll kill me if I get it wrong. I think it was Lithuania. It was Lithuania or Latvia, wasn't it? I'm virtually positive it was Lithuania. And he was a fan of the show, and he wanted to move here. And he didn't have any particularly special things, but he just kept at it. And then next thing you know, he's here. And he got married here, and he's joined the military in order to gain his citizenship, which I think one term of military, I've said this 100 times, need to be said 100 more times. One term of military service with an honorable discharge, automatic citizenship, and as far as I'm concerned, for you and your family as well. That's just a no-brainer for me. So, look, I still can't get my daughter, my stepdaughter, to come and visit America on a tourist visa. We can't get Natasha's daughter into the country on a tourist visa. So it's very hard to get here. But it's not impossible. Honestly, I'm just going to call you Wazard here. You're right, I don't have any particular connections on this, but this is a very bright community and a pretty close-knit community, the Stratosphere Lounge community. I know you're watching this live, and we will post this on YouTube, although it's going to be another 5-6 days because we've been put in timeout because we said something that the government lackeys at YouTube didn't agree with, so bad conservative. So I would think if you check the comments section at YouTube and just check constantly in here, I know that when Julius came over, there was a lot of support for him, and we were 2 days from buying our ticket to go to that his wedding. We were 2 days from buying the ticket, and that's when the lockdown happened. And then they rescheduled it, and we weren't able to get there the second time. But there are a lot of people here that can not only provide moral support, which is important, but also great practical advice. And I'm not one of them, but they're definitely here. So I wouldn't hesitate to reach out in the comment section. I wouldn't hesitate to reach out in the forum at billwhittle.com if you can. If you're watching this on YouTube and you have any advice for this guy and you've watched the show this long, then do it. We can make this happen. And one thing I've learned about dealing with the government is that they are, or on the Discord, as Marisha points out. One thing I've realized, Eduardo, is that the one thing that bureaucracies don't like is noise. That it is an essential part of the bureaucratic mindset to avoid the spotlight. And that actually means that it's possible to create enough focus on something so that it actually helps move things along. Listen, I'll tell you the same thing I told Julius and same thing I've told Natasha and same thing I told my mom, and it's not new to me. There are many millions and millions of Americans who are born in other countries, millions of them, and we should get every single one of them here. And it'd be a bonus if we could do a one-on-one swap, and for every hardworking janitor who wants to come here from Honduras, if we could swap that guy out for a university professor at Berkeley, we'd be out of our trouble in no time. But this country's not suffering from lack of room. It's suffering from lack of law, and it's suffering from buying voters with benefits at the cost of destruction of the country. I don't know a single conservative who's anti-immigration. I know every conservative who's anti-illegal immigration. Um, in 13 days, my wife is going to take the citizenship test. She's going to present her documentation. She's been here for over 5 years. Will have been married on the 31st of December for 5 years, and her exam is on the 29th of December. We talked about this last time. They are now, because of COVID, they're no longer really doing a swearing in ceremony. If she passes her test, she has the option, I think, of being sworn in right that second. And whether I get to watch it or not, we're going to take that option because, while I'd like to see it, I'd much rather have it happen. The idea of postponing it than having some other freaking thing come out of the skies, no. That's been a 5-year process. And 5 years seems like a long time. Doesn't seem like a long time looking back on it because you kind of do it one day at a time. But here's what I would recommend you do. Right now, get in contact with the people because you're watching this live on the comment section. And I'm going to openly ask people who watch this stuff on YouTube, and for God's sakes, Wizard, bring this up again next time, and don't be shy about bringing it up because we need to bring this up a number of times. If you know of a way to do this, that would be great. I would imagine that if just off the top of my head, I would imagine that the fastest pathway to this would be to see if we know anybody who's a member of the Stratosphere Lounge team who has not a personal relationship necessary, but some connection to either a representative or even better a senator, because that's what I was talking about with the bureaucratic mindset. If they get an email from a senator's aide saying, "Hey, we're kind of interested in this guy," what they want is they want that problem to go away. They don't give a damn about you. Frankly, it's a bureaucracy. But if we can make this an issue, and I don't mean a national issue, I don't mean a statewide issue, I don't mean a local issue. I mean, if we can have 3 or 4 people basically pointing in the same direction, then we might be able to pull that off. So let's make that a project, why don't we? I know that we did an awful lot with Julius. I'm not saying we got him here. On the contrary, he got himself here. We just watched it happen. But it was fun to watch it happen. Yeah, you need to get out of there. Red State America is still America. I mean, it's the real deal. And geographically, most of the country is America. Just stay away from the coast, for God's sake. And not just good luck, but because good luck is kind of no. Let's make this a project. Let's make this happen. So we're going to stay on this until we get the process started. Once we get the process started, then the wheels of bureaucracy grind at their own rate, and there's probably not much we can do about that. But at least we can start the process. And you need to be here, and we need engineers. In fact, we need lots of engineers. So don't let the fact that you're qualified, hardworking, disciplined, intelligent, polite, and disciplined, don't let that get in your way. We still need people like you here, and we always will. Graham Godfrey says, "Glad you're well enough. Thank you." Justin Roberts says, "Bill, where do you think the lack of accountability in our society nowadays has come from?" That's actually a really good question. And I'll get to Joe Pomeroy. And then I think that'll do it, because Martin Archer and Eric back again. Susan Speakman. I'll get to... Susan Speakman's about... Hang on. All right, I want to get to those 3, so that way at least we get one of just about everybody, I think. So Justin said, where do you think the lack of accountability in our society nowadays has come from? I think it's come from our parents. I mean, the parents. It seems to me that I mean, my dad was a member of the Greatest Generation, so I'm a baby boomer. I'm a late baby boomer, but nevertheless. Uh, and since our fathers went through such horrific times, the Depression and all of that, and then the war, when they came back, they just wanted peace and quiet. And I'm not saying that they were bad fathers. I'm just saying that as a generation, because we're talking about society wide now, it's not that they had a certain emotional distance and they worked like animals. They just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. The idea of a 60, I mean, Don Draper is, put all the peccadillos that they put into his background, but Don Draper is my dad. I mean, cigarette and suit and scotch and just going out there and kicking ass on a daily basis, just constantly. So they worked real hard, and they did all that to give their kids all of the material advantages that they didn't get during the Depression, and plus they got to watch their friends turn into pink mist. And that, I think that put a certain distance, emotional distance between them and their kids like me. And then I think the boomer generation had kids and decided that they were not going to be the kind of parents that their fathers primarily were. That they were going to be a lot more accessible and a lot more present in their kids' life. And I think that happened, and I think that's good too. But I think that, as usual, I think they overcompensated. I think because, as a general rule, greatest generation fathers were a little bit distant because they had a lot to be distant about. I think boomer parents went way too far in the other direction and became indulgent. And EM Man says friends and not parents. That's the real problem. I've seen it all the time. We're 2 or 3 generations into this now, where because people had parents that were distant, they decided we're gonna not be that person, and so they're the kind of people say, "How's it going, buddy?" And their little kids are screaming and tearing apart airline seats and throwing orange juice containers around and pulling people's hair, and they're saying, "Okay, pal, let's settle down, all right, a little bit, buddy. Let's come on, pal. Let's look out the window and see if we can count the trucks." So they didn't do any of the discipline, and then that leads to an entire generation that doesn't know anything about that kind of thing. And now we're at the point now we're 2 generations down, and Natasha does a bunch of family photography, and we both agree on this. We're seeing parents that are afraid of their children. They don't realize that they're afraid of them, but that's exactly what they are. These kids come over to the house and they are screaming at the top of their lungs, and the parents are saying, "If you're good, I'll buy you a toy." Now, what does that tell you? I mean, you don't know. What does that tell a kid? A kid figures out that the more noise I make and the more disruptive I am, the more stuff I get. What do you think the outcome of that will be? And the parents just keep trying to bribe them. And they're trying to bribe them because they don't know how to be tough with their kids, because their parents were never tough with them, and their parents were never tough with them because their parents were too tough, too distant. In a nutshell, I would say that's essentially the cause of the problem. One thing I've learned is that whenever I see kids who when their father asks them to do something, they say, "Yes, sir," those kids are much, 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 much happier. Much happier. I talked about not too long ago, I talked about a family I admire very much, a big family, very religious family, and the daughters dress in dresses. I mean, it's a Little House on the Prairie kind of thing. And you would think, oh, those poor kids. They're the happiest kids I ever saw. They're astonishingly well prepared for life. Their parents worked hard and made little money. And so when the kids were, and there were a bunch of kids, there's 7 of them or something, the kids are growing up, the parents and the kids get together, and parents say, "We want to buy you a business. We'll pay for the business, but you're going to run it. You're going to run all of it. You're going to run the finances, you're going to run the supply, you're going to run all the dirty details and so on. We're going to buy you a business, what business do you want? And they got together and talked about it. The kids did. And they decided that they thought they would get into, strangely enough, alpaca farming. So they have alpacas, and they raise alpacas, and they sell the fabulous alpaca fur. And that means you have to feed them, you have to have veterinary bills, you have to deal with sick and dying things. And I didn't know this at the time, but if you're going to raise alpacas, you need to have a llama or two. I knew about llamas before I knew about alpacas. You may think they're the same thing, but a llama is like the Astartes of alpacas. A llama is like an alpaca that's been working out and completely roided out. And I learned from the children, who are not children anymore, that you need to have a llama or two there, because not only do the llamas protect the alpacas, the llamas kind of calm everything down. It's like I say, it's like this Astartes space marine up on the hill. I don't want to piss off the llama. Isn't that what Napoleon Dynamite had? Yes, I think he had an alpaca. He certainly had either an alpaca or a llama. But in any event, that's what they wanted to do. So they did. And now they're tremendously successful at it. And that business runs at a profit. And because they're raising animals, there's a lot of wonder. I have a picture of me holding a baby alpaca. It's the cutest thing in the entire world. But if you're going to run animals, if you're going to raise animals as for a living, fortunately, and not coincidentally, these are not animals that they raised for the meat. It's not like they're going to sell them and see them as hamburgers. You can get emotionally attached to alpacas. But if you're going to be raising animals for a living, you still have to deal with the downside of that. And the least part of the downside is all of the manure problems. And the biggest part is sometimes they die on you. And sometimes you wake up in the morning to go see your pet alpaca, and there's nothing but a red smear on the ground where a wolf or a coyote or something got through, and you have to deal with that. And a baby alpaca is a cria. That's something I didn't know. I like learning new things. So I had this little cria in my arms. Adorable. But my point is, these parents from the outside, most modern people would say that they're abusively strict, because they make the girls wear dresses and they make the boys go out and work and stuff. But I've never seen happier children. And I've never seen children that love their parents as much. And I've never seen parents love their children as much. I saw this guy who's a busy, successful guy, had a couple of guests over at the house, and I was one of them. And he was talking with some of us, and his littlest girl came up to him and stood next to him and said, "Daddy." And he said, "1 second, honey." And she said, "Daddy." He said, "Sweetheart, wait a minute. I'll be with you in a minute." And I've seen parents blow kids off like that before. So we had a conversation, finished up our conversation, and the second that conversation was over, he turned around and got down on his haunches, face to face with his little girl, and said, "What is it, sweetheart? What can I do for you?" And I was so struck by that absolute focus. Not like your dad, hang on, yeah, Dad, what is it? Watch me jump into the thing. Okay, you watching, Dad? Yeah, I'm watching. Splash. That was great. No. Watch me jump into the pool. Okay, let's go. And he and the mother raised the happiest kids I've ever seen. I love them. I think they're fantastic. They're fantastic. And so there's your problem. Nobody knows the balance. I think the greatest generation's parents were great parents, and I know they were, because that's why they're the greatest generation. But the trauma that they went through really did what trauma will do. It made them protective, and so I think that got passed down to their kids, which is my generation, and then we overcompensated, and then our kids never knew any real discipline, and so they just didn't know what to do, and then their kids they're afraid of them. And so when I see people with kids screaming in the aisles and literally on the floor being dragged out by their collar, kicking, I want to do it. I want to just go over and I want to spank them myself. I'll take care of this for you. I know you don't know what to do. I'll get this sorted out. But it's not the kid's fault. It's not even the parents' fault, because I don't think the parents ever saw that happen. What's the matter, buddy? You're not talking to a 30-year-old. You're talking to a 3-year-old. You can't reason with him because he doesn't have the cells yet. He doesn't have the neural connections to reason. He understands pain and pleasure, and and you're rewarding everything he does, so he's just pushing limits, trying to figure out where they are, and there aren't any, so you need to administer a little pain. No, couldn't do that. Yes, Marisha said it's a skill. It has to be taught and learned. Exactly. It's like engineering. And used to be automatic. Good parents would raise good children. Good children would raise more good children. And consequently, you'd have a healthy society. Likewise, bad parents raise bad kids. All these virtually, I can't think of any exceptions off the top of my head. All of the mass murdering psychopaths were horrifically abused as children. I mean, horrifically abused. But sometimes you just get bad eggs, and that's all there is to it. I've seen that too. Just a bad egg. It's just raised in love and caring, and sometimes they just turn out wrong. But as a general rule, I think that's the answer to your question. That lack of balance that the Depression and the war caused the pendulum to swing the other direction, and now we're paying for that with parents that are too soft instead of too hard. Jason says, "Hi, Bill," hand waving emoji, and I don't think there's anything else. Hi, Jason. And then Susan Speakman, I think we're probably done. Yes. Hi, Bill. Hey, Susan. What's the best argument to refute the lefties' talking points that Bezos, Musk, etc. should be paying lots more taxes and/or that they should be donating more money to charities? I always make the point that every trip into space, whether by civilian, military, or government entity, adds to the total sum of knowledge about space travel and should be encouraged, especially as Bezos and Musk are paying for these trips out of their own pockets. Are there any other arguments that can be made to shut these maroons up? Yeah. There's two arguments. Let's go with Musk. Elon Musk is a social welfare program. He personally is a social welfare program. What I mean by that is, because of Elon Musk, there are thousands, certainly tens of thousands, and perhaps hundreds of thousands of people who are receiving daily sustenance as a result of Elon Musk. They're not getting government handouts, they're getting paychecks. They're getting paychecks for companies that didn't exist before Elon Musk was there. So there are thousands, tens of thousands of people that are buying food, buying mortgages, putting their kids through college, doing all of this stuff, providing what is essentially government aid through the old-fashioned means of working for it and hiring them. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there who are living excellent lives not just that are comfortable, but full of adventure and purpose because of Elon Musk. And if he wasn't there, those jobs wouldn't be there. There wouldn't be any SpaceX, there wouldn't be any Tesla, there wouldn't be any Starlink, wouldn't be any of that stuff. So he is a giant welfare program in and of himself. And in addition to that, frankly, and I'm serious as I can be about that, that social good is enough for me so that he shouldn't have to pay any taxes ever. The amount of social good that he's doing just by hiring all these people should exempt him from taxes. But it's not how things work here. And when Senator Warren said he should pay his fair share and stop freeloading, and I thought, well, you want to talk about freeloading, Senator? I can think of somebody who goes around telling everybody that she's a Native American so that she can tell other people what to do and hasn't created any wealth for anybody. Elizabeth Warren has not helped any one person out of poverty in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. She just gets rich off of telling other people that they should give more of their money to her to spend on other people and keep a little for herself. So there's that. And then the second argument is very simple. Musk got it down. He said, this year I'm going to pay more in taxes than any human being has ever paid in the history of the world. I don't doubt it. So how many families what's Musk going to pay in taxes? Is he going to pay $1 billion in taxes? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. He may be paying billions in taxes and maybe less, but when he says he's paying more money than anybody in history, it's true. So all of those social welfare programs that people want to tax rich people for, Elon Musk is providing, not Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren isn't providing jack. If you really, 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 really want to help poor people, like you say you do, and you go into an NGO, $10 billion, that buys a fair amount of food stamps, $10 billion from one guy. But if you're, look, if you want to do with progressives and you say you really care about poor people, yeah, what are you doing to help poor people? Well, I'm raising awareness. Well, you know what? Poor people don't need raise awareness. Poor people need help. Poor people need assistance getting out of poverty, not assistance keeping them in poverty. But if you really wanted to help poor people, you'd go out and get a job as a corporate finance officer so that you could make $700,000 a year, and then you could pay $200,000 a year in taxes. You'd be putting $200,000 a year into the welfare system that you are saying you support. And you're not putting anything into that system. You're just walking around taking it out and talking about poor people and doing not a damn thing for them. You want to help poor people? Get a job and pay some taxes. I don't think that's the way to help poor people, but that's how it works right now. This is what Mitt Romney should have said in 2012. I said this in that Romney speech. Instead of saying, oh, I'm not really all that rich, it's like, you're worth $200 million. Mitt. I'm not worth $200 million, sir. I'm worth $250 million. I worked very hard for every one of those pennies. Every one of them came from me from free exchange. I'm not the government. Didn't put my pistol to the head and take people's money at gunpoint. I provided them for a service, and nobody trades down. So I have $250 million, and that means that I am paying for hundreds of thousands of people's lives through the work that we all do together. And furthermore, I'm paying enough in taxes to cover hundreds of thousands of more people. So, you're the one, Mr. Obama, who's not done jack. You handed out forms and took money from the government. I put millions of dollars into this machine that feeds people. You've done nothing. Nothing except take it out and convince other people that somehow people like me aren't doing enough. You somehow end up being the virtuous one. You handed out forms. I created 100,000 jobs, put 100,000 families into homes, fed 100,000 families, paid enough taxes to pay another 100,000 families. I'm responsible for hundreds of thousands of people living at various degrees of life, but they're living and they've got air conditioning and electricity, and you have done nothing but sow further division and make more people dependent on this miserable handout of government trinkets in order to keep them on the reservation so they vote for you. You're the one who should be ashamed of yourself. I'm disgraced. I find it disgraceful to be on the same stage as you. How can you be a man of these abilities and still have made so little money? What's wrong with you? I know what's wrong with you. You don't want to work. You're lazy. You're a lazy man. That's why you hired somebody to write this Dreams of Your Father book that is all about you, but has nothing to do with you. You're the one who should be ashamed of yourself, not me. You're the one. You're the one who's the freeloader. You're the one who is causing all this damage, and you're trying to make me into the bad guy? I'm not only carrying people, I am producing something that allows other people to get through life without being carried. They have their own dignity. If they don't like me, they can leave. They can form their own jobs. They are going to college because of the rent that we pay, the salaries for them, and they earned it. It's not a gift from me. They earned it. It's their money now. And you want to take their money too. You don't want to just take my money. You want to take the money from the people that I pay to have a living. You don't want to just take my money. You want to take their money too. Get off of your high horse that you haven't owned and don't earn. You're a miserable, low-life, lazy politician who is using this form of envy to generate rage towards people that are not only helping the disadvantaged, but helping the regular people too. And you think I'm going to just sit here and take this from you? No, I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and take it from you. You've done nothing for anybody except yourself. And everything about your life is about yourself. Okay? That's it. That's the story. There you go. Nothing to it. I think that's probably done for the night. Hey, look at that, 9:02. This is a three-hour extravaganza. Yeah, Mauritius said Elon Musk pays enough in taxes to buy Congress with it 3 times over. I wish he would. One of the favorite, very, very, very first afterburners I ever did. I did the math on this. Let me think if I can remember the number. Yeah. For less than $1 billion, which is, we spend $10 billion a day in this country. That information is 10 years old. It's probably more than that now. So for $1 billion, which is maybe 2 or 3 hours worth of government spending, we could solve all of our problems forever in this country. And the way you do it is this. It's very simple. You need less than $1 billion in cash a year, and all our problems are over. You take $450 million and you pay every single member of the House of Representatives $1 million. Senators, a little more upscale, so you pay them $5 million each. It's 100 senators at $5 million, so that's $500 million, $450 million for the House. That's less than about $950 million. And you pay the representatives $1 million and you pay the senators $5 million, and you pay them to go to the beach on the Cayman Islands and stay there. That's what the money's for. We are going to pay you $1 million a year, and all we ask from you is that you don't come to work. That's the only thing. You do whatever you want with it, and any other money you want to take as well. That's fine. If you can find a way to rake in more money, you won't, because we're paying you not to come in. But you think I'm joking about this? I'm not joking at all. If you got the Congress to go away for 4 years and let people run their country, the people run their country, we'd be out of these problems in no time, because we would all look around and say, I can't solve this gigantic $1 trillion federal issue, but I can solve this local issue, and everything's a local issue. Natasha says that the Russians believe that every time you sneeze, it means something you said is true. That's what I would do. I'd pay them to not come to work, and I'd pay them big money, and if they wanted more than that, I'd pay it too. We pay $650 billion a year in defense. If the Congress wanted $100 billion to not come to work, I think it'd be a extortion, but I think you'd make the case you could pay it. I actually think you could make the case, and this is a whole other issue, talked about this before, this is another hour discussion I'm not going to get into, but basically I think frankly, when it comes to the reparations issue, I think we should just pay it. No questions asked. Let's find a number. $100,000 seem reasonable? 200,000, 200 grand? Let's pay it. So what are we talking about here? 25 billion, something like that? Put it on the bill. Pay them. Everybody who wants the reparations. Anybody who doesn't want the reparations, anybody who has integrity and honor, we're not talking to you. But I think we ought to pay the reparations. And I think that every single person that demands reparations should be able to sign a contract. And that contract says, in exchange for your $200,000 of reparations, we are now paying you to make whole the damage caused by slavery. In order to get your $200,000, you'll have to do what everybody else has to do in a legal settlement, and that is you will have to abandon your claim legally. I think we should just do that. And then it's over. Here's your $200,000. 6 of you in the family? Fantastic. You just made $1,200,000. All yours. What do you think would happen if that happened? Well, first of all, that $200,000 per person would go right back into the economy, would just immediately go into the economy, with very few exceptions. And then, after that, if you started to hear this slavery racism thing again, you would be able to say, you've been paid, you took your money, I don't want to hear it. Make them sign a contract. And people say, well, then they'd say it wasn't enough. It would, you know what? It certainly wouldn't be enough to make them happy, but it would be enough to release the white guilt over it. That would be when people would be able to say, you got your money. I didn't. You got $200,000. I didn't. In fact, I paid for a big hunk of that $200,000. Okay, that's it. Done. And that's why, by the way, if you've ever wondered, you ever wonder why when you hear people talk about reparations, you've never heard specifics? Has that ever crossed your mind? It's crossed my mind. All this talk about reparations. Have you ever heard one person say, ever, what they would consist of? No. Because they're not interested in reparations. They're interested in the eternal lever of you owe us. That's why I think we should just eliminate that lever and just pay them. I don't think they deserve it. Of course I don't think they deserve it. But that's not the point. Okay? You want it? Here it is. Done. And then it's over. It's over. Because then you really can say, you got your money. You signed a contract. You agreed that in order to get the $200,000 that you would drop this issue. Now, I understand you're not dropping it, but since you got compensated for the damages that you're still claiming, you have no standing anymore, so shut the F up. Not interested anymore. I don't care. I really think it'd be worth it. I really do. I think it'd be worth it. And I think, you want to talk about a stimulus package? This would cost, what, 1%, 2% of these stimulus packages? You solve all of our social issues. Just give them the money. Boom. Sign here. Here's your check. And would that make white people resentful? Yes, it would. They're talking about giving $400,000 to illegal immigrants. Somehow that managed to get shot down. Okay. And so if that happens and they sign the agreement, that's it. The end of your right to complain. I think if Elizabeth Warren wants to claim reparations for her Indian blood, and she can prove that she's 1,024th part Indian, she wants it, sign on the dotted line. Here you go. Here's your money. Now shut the F up. Okay? Now shut up. I'm not interested. I'm not listening. I don't care. I don't give a damn. You got your money. Shut up. That's what we need. That's what we need. And if we were smart, that's what we would be doing. Marisha said should release claim for your descendants too. Of course he released claim for your descendants. Your descendants are the descendants of people who got $200,000 drop out of the sky. You have privileged descendants now. Your descendants are privileged. You've been given something that you didn't work for all in one place. 6 years of working class salary dropped on you with a parachute. And not only are your children not able to claim any more reparations, your children are privileged now. Here's $200,000. Your kids should go all to private schools. You should be able to. They should all be rich and famous and successful and all the rest of the stuff. But if they're not, that's not our problem anymore. That's your problem now. Here you go. I'm telling you, this is, yeah. And like I said, where's the harm? Put it on the tab, right? Put it on the tab. What do we owe now? 30 trillion, something like that. Okay, here, have some free money. We're giving it out anyway. We're giving it out anyway on a yearly basis. Why don't we put an end to the giving it out by just giving it to them in one lump sum and making them say, we renounce our claims, period. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens if I spend it all and then I go back on welfare again? Well, you don't get to go back on government welfare. If you spend it all, then you better have some friends who you spent some of the money on. Because you've renounced your right. You can't come to us and say, well, I can't afford my rent anymore. You had $200,000. So whatever the number is, that's what I would do. And would it cause, like I said, a great deal of resentment? Yes, it would. And that's exactly what we need. We need a morally equal playing field. You've been claiming victimhood for something. All right, here you go. Now we're even. And the beautiful thing about this is, I think most people would completely squander that money, but there's a significant percentage of people who wouldn't. There's a significant percentage of people who would have a windfall like that and would turn it into a way into prosperity. Not just into sustainability, but into prosperity. I don't know what the percentage would be, but certainly that's the case. And there you go. So, Marisha says affirmative action was the reparations, but the problem with that is that there was no check, all right? And all of the benefits, all the social benefits, welfare, Medicare, all that stuff, of course it's reparations. It's been reparations for 3 generations now, but it's never come as a check. And more importantly, it's never been presented as, here's a contract, yes or no. Because that's the key to it, right? You can decline the reparations check, and then you could continue to complain about things. Because we're just going to grant you the case just to get this over with. So, no, you don't have to take the $250,000 or whatever the number is. You don't have to take it. You can turn down the offer, and you can continue to complain and get welfare benefits and all the rest of it. How many people do you think would say no to that? Not many, which is why you never hear this, because this would be the end of the problem. And that would be the kindest thing you could do for people, is to end this problem. This would be like Israel moving the embassy to Jerusalem. The problem with the Palestinians is that they have elected people who continually keep this running sore open. If somebody were to say to them, no, these keys you're holding for these houses, for 70 years? Nope. Gone. They're gone. It's the best thing you can do for somebody. That's why when we did that right angle on those guys who go and find bodies, does anybody want to see a dead body of their loved one coming out of a river? No. Is it good for them? Yes. Because it's an end. Now you can move on. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, which is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. This one's going on to Hulu tomorrow. Won't be on Facebook for another YouTube for another 5 or 6 days on account of, we spoke our mind as people often would do in a free country, and I just forgot where I was. But that'll do it. And again, this show is made possible by a small number of people who step up, and most of you watching now are those people, and for that we're very, very grateful. So until next week, we will see you, and I think I might have my little nephew Ashton here next week, and that'll be Christmas show, right? Yeah, somewhere around there, something like that. That'd be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Taps, thanks very much. Okay, thanks for joining us, gang, and I'll wish you a Merry Christmas next week when I see you next week. All right, bye bye.